All right, everybody, welcome back to the Lions Pit podcast. I am your host, Nick Gomez. With me today is the one and only Radio Rahim. Again, so grateful for you showing up today, man. I appreciate you.
Man, I enjoy it. Nothing like Austin. This is, podcast hallowed ground.
It's becoming that way.
It's becoming.
Well, I guess it's been that way, right?
Absolutely.
I'm just new to the scene when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Well, you're in the right place, man.
Yeah, in the right place with the right people.
That's right.
Our mutual friend, Matt, that got this all set up for us. Thank you, Matt. I got introduced to him through another mutual friend through On at the gym that I work at.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I talked to him, the more I realized, man, this is definitely becoming the podcast mecca.
Yeah. I mean, shit,
or like
became
has
the
been.
voice of America.
No shit, right?
Past,
We're about to be a
3
very
months.
important city.
Exactly.
It's kind of crazy.
So, yeah, I mean, geez, man, congratulations on the show.
Thank you.
Getting into this field is impacted, so you got to differentiate yourself from everybody.
Yeah.
I would say first thing is having a very cool setup, a nice premise, good environment. You got those things covered. So
yeah, check.
I'm excited to get into
gotta
it.
not be an asshole.
Yeah. Well, apparently that's not actually a prerequisite.
Right? Yeah. Actually, there's a lot of them out there.
There's a lot of money in being an asshole these days.
Unfortunately. But yeah, man, it's like I said, having the studio is a huge benefit. I don't know what I would be someone recording in a basement. Honestly, I wouldn't be recording though, to be 100% honest, because I had a couple people come up to me, whether it's some of the athletes I've worked with or people that have done stuff in business, like our former COO at On It would come up to me and was like, man, the way you talk and you're knowledgeable about what you're speaking about, you should be doing a podcast. And I'm like, every asshole has a podcast. I was like, who's gonna listen to me? And the stars aligned, and I just got introduced to the right people. And to be so young in the game and to be able to record in a studio like this, I mean, it's like I'm getting MMA lessons from Greg Jackson or some shit. I should not be here, but here I am.
Well, then this is where you should be.
Yeah, right. Yeah, then this is where you should be. Right. Yeah, find your way into the room. So I've been getting a little more familiar with you and your background in the last couple days, and I think it's awesome how you started. So I kind of want to get into that story. You started out on YouTube.
Yeah. Well, not actually. I started out on Max Boxing website. This is before even YouTube.
No shit.
So I was a teenager, and I was not intending to be even sports journalist. I was always a broadcaster, though. So when I was in high school, I went to a performing arts high school, and we had a radio station on campus. It was dormant, but I discovered that this whole setup existed in the basement of the school, and there's a radio tower on top of the school. So the kind of landscape of the school was a bit iconic. It was on all the merch and stuff like this. And there's this big radio tower on the top. But it occurred to me, it took 2 years to occur to me, to be fair. But by the 10th grade, I was like, why do we have a tower on the top of the school? And all that is attached to this radio station in the basement that we're not using. And so I went down there and I was like, well, can I go check it out? And so I did, in fact, and then petition the faculty of the school if the equipment was functional, could I strike it up? So like some fucking 80s or 90s, coming of age movie, I go down there, the lights are out, there's a thick layer of dust on everything.
Oh, this is amazing.
I flip the switch, the little lights come on behind the dust, blow that away, and I'm like, let's do a show.
Sounds like something from Ghostbusters. Yeah, you walk into the old fire station, there's a pole. This place is great.
Exactly. Let's fight some fires, man.
That's sick.
So I started doing a post school day show, right? Like after school kind of show. I started with 30 minutes. I was playing a little music, but I was also talking about headline news. I was pulling, what a 10th grader thinks is important, and talking about that. And of course, you mix that in with what's going on campus and then the world view. And so that's where it started, really, as far as broadcasting out to people with my own show. But hearing my own voice was an important thing to me even earlier than that.
Yeah. Because
I'm an only child. I was a latchkey kid, so I spent a lot of time at home after school on my own. I'm talking now, third, fourth grade, kind of figuring out what you're going to do with yourself after school. And so I would listen to the radio constantly, and I liked super oldie kind of music, like
Very
40s, like Big Bopper,
Oh, wow, like
kind
really
of like
oldies.
golden
Yeah.
oldies. And that would be the music I would listen to. But then the radio DJs on there were always running prizes, I guess because they were broadcasting primarily to a much older audience who likes games and likes to like win stuff and shit like this. So I would start calling it like every contest, but I was really listening all the time, so I would be able to win the contest. It was always about like, what did we play in this hour, or who's this artist, and
Like when like tickets to like concerts and stuff, or whatever.
tickets to concerts, duffel bags, all this stuff. But you're supposed to be 18 to do it, right? And so as a kid, you don't realize how obvious it is that you are a kid.
Yeah, that's well said.
So I'm calling up, and of course the DJs get onto it early, but they let me keep calling, let me keep winning. Stuff that I actually could win, they would send.
Oh,
But
nice.
I was mortified the very first time I called, because this is back in the day when you could record with a cassette tape the audio of the radio, and I heard myself back, and I was like, that's my voice? Like, I was like, this is terrible. I can feel now what it felt like then, as if it happened this morning.
Wow.
And so then I started to listen to DJs talk, and I would call up and put this voice on and try to sound older and try to sound cooler and like pay attention to my own voice. So I think that is where it started, hearing my voice in the speakers. And, you know, it's funny because people will say, oh, you know, do you just love the sound of your own voice? Yeah, kind of.
I do now.
I don't know what I might sound like had I not done that. Like, I'm not sure if this is my voice. Or if this
I don't know if it's genuine.
Something I created at a very early age, and now I don't know what I actually would sound like had I not done that. So that's the deep dive. I don't even know.
I love that.
I don't know if anybody knows that one.
Nice.
And then
I went on first, folks.
That's right. Then I went on to do this thing in high school, and then I left high school and the Bay Area at the same time, because
So you're originally from the Bay Area?
I'm originally from Oakland and Berkeley, and so after high school I went to LA, and I started getting into other stuff like writing treatments for music videos, and eventually I wanted to shoot. I wanted to direct, and I got into film loading on like major motion pictures and videos and stuff, you know, so I was writing and film loading, and with the idea that I would ultimately operate, because I didn't want to be a director who was just directing operators and cinematographers for the vision. I wanted to be hands-on. And this entire time, I am boxing training. No intention to be an athlete, certainly no intention to compete, but I'm living in the gym because I love training boxing, right? Nice. My godfather was Dana Bratton, who was a trainer to the stars. He got major celebrities ready for movies. His father was a legendary boxer, and so
the sweet science.
You know, yeah, right. So I'm up at like 4 a.m. training in the park, and then train again at 11 at Wildcard Boxing Gym. And at that point, it hadn't even been open very long. That's Freddie Roach's, probably the most famous boxing gym in the world. And so at that time, it was really a fairly new gym. And one day, Manny Pacquiao walked in and changed everything for the trajectory of history. But at the time, it was really James Toney's gym.
Okay.
James Toney.
Before the MMA day?
Yeah.
I don't say days.
No, the day.
Yeah, the day.
Right, the first, the last, and hopefully the only ever day.
Yeah.
But then he was still at the sunset of his career. It wasn't prime Tony. I'm not that old. But because James Toney is such an incredible talent and just a warrior at heart, even in his sunset days, he was still beating the shit out of people in the gym. He is, you know, a nothing even close to a shrinking violet. This guy is boisterous. This guy is aggressive, and he's running that gym. So as people would come and go, sparring partners and such, there was a guy named Danny Green, an Australian, who wanted to fight James for real.
Oh, yeah.
And was basically calling him out. So he came to Wildcard of his own volition, into James Toney's space, into Freddie Roach's gym to call James Toney out. And so this is one of the many sparring sessions that I shot. But the reason I was shooting sparring sessions is because this is how I was paying my gym membership. And it was how I was figuring out how to operate a camera with live action. So I was thinking, okay, let me start shooting sparring sessions because this is live action. the window is behind me, so there's a lot of shadows, and nobody in the boxing game at that time was really recording sparring for themselves.
Yeah, so I was going to ask, was the gym like paying you to do that? Or, I mean, you're getting your membership, but was it like for content for them? Or?
No, because there was no such thing as content.
Oh yeah, okay. I guess like review footage, like,
Right.
Like, all right, see what you did here, kind of stuff. Yeah.
That wasn't a thing in boxing at the time.
Wow.
So I was selling these tapes, $20 a pop, to the fighters, and then giving them to Freddie for any trainer or any fighters that he had, so that he could review the tape and show the fighters what they wanted. But this was actually my idea to even do that.
Pioneer.
And Freddie was like immediately like, yeah, okay. You know, I mean, this is one of the many people, really, I've been fortunate to have met and given me help, in that they saw the vision and was willing to facilitate me with a little bit of push in the right direction to give me an opportunity to try what I was thinking. So Freddie, you know, forever was like the first guy in boxing to be like, do the thing you're doing and let me do it at his gym.
And what a name to do that.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I would give him the tapes for his fighters, and then people who he wasn't training, I would sell them the tapes. And this time, it's analog tape. So I'm talking about a mini DV. This ain't no digital iPhone shit.
Yeah.
I got to go home, and sparring is 3 days a week, 3 hours. This is a busy gym. Yeah. So average 3 hours a day. And during that time, you working in a gym, understanding combat sport, it's not like it's just two guys for 3 hours. No. It's one guy for 3 rounds, then another guy comes in, then another guy comes in, and this first guy comes out, and another guy comes in, and then this guy has 3 more rounds with him, then another guy comes in. So I have to edit the tapes specifically to the fighter who wants to buy them. They're not going to fucking fast forward through 2 hours of some other fighters. So I'm spending 2-3 hours at home at least editing the footage together for the fighters who do want to pay, and then spending 4-5 hours in the gym between my training and shooting it, and then getting home and doing all this. It's like that. I turned that into like a full-time job for myself. And what I didn't realize at the time, I was not only learning how to operate a camera and learning how to edit, I was learning the game of boxing at a different level. You understand?
At the highest level.
At the highest level.
Yeah.
And so what happened was that James Toney was sparring Danny Green, because Danny came and called him out, said, you know, and James said, you know, if you beat me in this gym, then I'll fight you for real.
Oh, fuck.
And you know, at the time, this footage is iconic. It's all over the internet. And at the time, it seemed to me like James was really having his way with it. But in hindsight, maybe this was a little bit more of an even fight than it seemed at the time. But I'd seen James do this to so many people. It's not like, okay, if you watch the footage, it's not like Danny isn't holding his own. But I know that James is in control the whole time. Because James, at this point, is a lot heavier. He's I won't say lazy, but he's not gonna do more than is necessary, so he lays on the ropes a lot. He ties you up, bangs, ties you up, and then he'll have a flurry and then lay off and let you kind of rope-a-dope you. It's not because he can't get out of the way; he just doesn't bother.
Conserving energy.
He just is not bothering, right? He's having himself a time, and so that's what was happening. Anyway, this fight never materializes in the real marquee world, but the rumor goes out that Danny Green's come to wild card and this sparring session happened. And of course, I'm the only one with the footage. And I don't even know who Danny Green is. He's an Australian popular fighter, but he's not popular in the States. So it was a surprise to me that there was so much interest in seeing him do this sparring session. But to be fair, I thought he lost the sparring session. He didn't want the tape, which is evidence that he didn't think he won it. Tony doesn't give a fuck, so he didn't want it.
That's funny.
And so I got a few calls. Some calls started rolling like, hey, we heard you got this footage. We heard you got the footage. Can we see it? Can we blah, 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 blah. And again, there's no YouTube. Their only boxing is happening as a news outlet is on Max Boxing. That's the original boxing news site. And I ended up getting a call from Fox Sports West. Mind you, I'm in LA. So that's television.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. And they're like, we'll give you $500 for it. My first call came from Max though. And so I said,
Did they offer you any money, Max?
Max, they offered me like $50 or something like this, right?
Yeah.
And so then I call Max Boxing back. I'm like, you know what? Fox Sports has offered me $500, but I'm going to give it to you guys for free.
What a move.
Keep the 50, right?
Veteran move.
And they're like, great. Yeah, cool. That sounds good. All I want is a year-long contract to shoot these sparring sessions and give them all to you.
How old are you at this time?
19.
Okay, because sounds super smart.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, damn, that's a great idea.
And they're like, we can't do it. You know, we're writers. We do blah, blah, blah. All right, no problem. I hang up, right? They call back in 30 seconds. They're like, all right, we'll do it. So I do that. Now they are just going to put this sparring session up on the site. Because imagine, again, websites work differently than YouTube. It was primarily writers. There was no real video, but they had a component for video if they wanted to use it.
Okay.
So they were just going to put the sparring session up as is. And I'm like, wait a minute. This is something that will never happen in the real competitive boxing world on television. So let's put it on as if it were television, right? And at the time, it was Steve Kim and Doug Fisher. And Doug Fisher is now the Ring magazine editor-in-chief. Steve Kim has worked at ESPN, and he has a show with Mario Lopez now. Okay. So, you know, these guys in our sport are now legends. But at that time, we were all kind of upstarts, and these guys were beyond me. They had their own site, and they were really the voice of boxing online, the only site. So that's how I got into it. And I said, you know what, Doug, you and I commentate it. The editor will put it together round by round. We do replays, all this stuff. And that became Gym Wars, which was the
I've heard of that.
boxing show online ever like that. And so what happened was, as the internet grew and people understood how far-reaching it is, fighters start to think that they're reinventing the wheel, and trainers are thinking they got to keep all this shit secret, which is still nonsense to this day. Yeah. But it became harder over the course of time. Now, granted, this show was on for a while. It was very successful. People loved it. But over the course of time, it became a bit harder to get high-level names to participate. But while the show was growing, I grew elements of it. So I started to talk to the fighter before the fights and talk to the fighter after the sparring session and the opponent and do a little kind of build up to the sparring. So it became like a full show. And as the action in the ring became harder to film, I started to lean into the interviews, which started to become the most popular element of the show. And then I, you know, again, thanks to Doug and Steve and them kind of recognizing, hey, this is something that isn't happening in coverage. And since that's your thing, they got me into major fights that they were writing articles on, like doing deadline reporting. And I brought my camera, not writing. I'm doing video, interviewing
like a
fighters.
handheld camera?
Mini DV, bro.
Wow.
And a little mic. And so, and then, you know, in the same sense that I love the sound of my own voice, I like the look of my face.
Very nice.
Particularly from this side. Yeah,
we found that out. Everyone watching will be like, this episode's a little different.
What does that mean? Anyway, so yeah, I started interviewing fighters, and that became really my real claim to fame individually. I hope to bring this show back now, because it was the cornerstone of the beginning of my career, and I think now maybe the environment, because the internet was small enough to do it then, and now maybe the internet is big enough to do it again.
Yeah.
So that's the origin story, how I got into covering sports. And because my initial intention was film loading, and if I was going to broadcast, it was more going to be talk radio, kind of news oriented, editorializing and talking about current events and social issues. But sports is what embraced me. That ball got rolling, and now I can't get out, man. It's like, it's too late for me. Save yourself.
Save yourself? Is it still like, is sports more of like your passion to report on, or would you rather
boxing now is certainly my passion to report on, because it's my life, right? That doesn't mean that the other things that are happening in the world don't affect me, or I don't have passion about speaking about them. I just have a platform for that.
Right.
So now it's the incumbent is on me to create a platform, if I want to speak beyond sports, to use my name recognition or audience that I have,
that voice
to that voice to get a broader platform who is willing to hear what I have to say about other things outside of boxing, which was probably the most important thing that happened for me personally as an individual during the pandemic, was that boxing, in what at the time felt like a cataclysmic, awful occurrence in life, that boxing was not in the ring.
Yeah.
There were no fights to cover. There was no fight week to attend. There was nowhere to go and really no action to speak of. And then I had to say, well, all right, what is it about what I do that I really miss, that I love so much? Because the fighters aren't going to be able to help me now with having somebody to talk to broadcast about boxing, and the sport isn't going to help me by having fights to report on.
Nothing to report.
So what am I going to do? I miss the life, but is it just the life that I've been doing and I miss the habitual repetition of it? Or is there something in this thing that I really am connected to? It made me really analyze and look inside to determine why I've chosen this life and what I'm even really doing it for. I think a lot of people had to be introspective at the time and really reassess like what life's about, what's important, right? So what was important to me that I realized at the time was it's not the sport that is being competed that is driving my passion, it's the fighter. And the fight inside them. The difference in my interviews and a lion's share of other people's interviews is I believe that I get at what that fighter has inside them to express. And before I can even juxtapose them with their physical opponent, if I have the opportunity and the time and the fighter trusts me, which, you know, because I've been doing this so long, happens frequently, I want to talk about that fight that they're having internally before they can turn their attentions on their physical opponent, the mental one, the one that you grew up with inside, the one that you had to overcome to even be able to have the confidence or courage to face anybody else.
Yeah.
Those little nuggets that are inside the interviews that are about the fight that's coming up on Saturday, I think is what was separating my interviews from other people. So because another great blessing that I had during COVID was to be around incredibly talented people who were exceptional in their field, because while everybody else was locked down at home and trying to figure out how they could even see their family and friends, I was in Yellow Springs, Ohio with Dave Chappelle, who was putting on comedy shows in a cornfield and brought...
I heard about that,
Yeah, and brought the best of not just the comedy world, but a lot of other fields of endeavor to this space in Yellow Springs, Ohio. So
interesting. Like having like TED Talks?
No.
Like if they weren't a comedian, like what were they doing?
No, I mean, some people just came to hang out.
Oh,
Some
gotcha.
people came
Okay,
to escape the COVID jail and the powwow with friends. And Dave created this incredible environment that literally is existing no place else, where people can get together. He was still testing, or they were doing all the stuff you're supposed to do, but he uniquely had not only the mechanisms to do it, but the vision to make it a community. While everybody in the world is going through this isolation, there was a place you could go and have community.
Yeah.
And so, you know, by the grace of God and the generosity of my friend David, I was able to be a part of that community and be available to impart what I had to give, but also was the recipient of the generosity of so many incredible people and what they had to give. So what I said was, the thing I've never done with this great gift I've given of friendship is look at my friends and the people in my immediate space who are not boxers or mixed martial artists, but are fighters in their own field, in their own endeavors in life, have had to overcome adversity and had to meet challenges and best them, and to be who they are, had to win so many battles along the way, and are constantly fighting a war that I don't know anything about, because it's not a physical one, and that's what I've been focused on. So I decided to have that conversation with those kind of warriors. And it became something I said on the show, but it became a mantra well beyond that, is that you don't, just because you're a boxer doesn't necessarily make you a fighter. But you don't have to be a fighter. You don't have to be a boxer to be a fighter. You don't have to be a mixed martial artist to be a fighter. Everybody's got some fight in them. And those of us who are, I guess, known beyond our immediate family and friends, but have made some kind of impact on the world stage, have had to overcome a lot of fights. And some of those fights, I believe, are internal. And the thing that I was discussing with people was the fight inside them. And that became a show called Till This Day.
Yes.
You know,
yeah.
because of this, you know,
Till
another
This Day.
viral moment.
Yeah.
But I took that moment. I was like, you know what? That really was something that grew beyond boxing, right? It was a viral moment that had impact beyond sports. So that's why I named the show the same, because this is it's rooted in boxing in that it's still a combat theme, but it transcends the sport of boxing in that everyone has this fight in them. And I wanted to talk about how they overcame it and how they're still fighting it. And I think it is one of the best experiences I've ever had. And the things that I learned from the people who were generous enough with their time and open and trusted me enough to be vulnerable and speak the truth as they experienced it. The things I learned doing that show, I'm carrying with me every day.
Yeah, and you don't have to pay student loans for that.
Right, exactly, no. But, you know, you did have to earn it.
Oh, absolutely, yeah,
So,
for sure. Yeah, you have to
yeah.
be trusted. You have to, still have work your way up the ladder. I mean, you had battles within yourself, I'm sure, at those times, and outside of the ring. You said you were training, obviously, and that's kind of the whole premise behind this podcast. And the reason it's called The Lion's Pit, it comes from a biblical story. I'm a very religious person. It's not. I don't force religion on the show. It has nothing to do with that, but. For me, the Lion's Pit, there's a character named Benaiah who goes on to become the head of King David's private security. But he started his first thing that got his name out there was he pursued a lion down into a pit on a snowy day and killed it, and he slayed the lion. And so the premise behind the podcast is, what lion are you pursuing? What's the lion that you're going to slay to help you achieve your destiny, essentially? So I've had such amazing people on here so far that have kind of express the same sentiment as far as everyone's fighting their battles, and that's the whole point of the podcast is get your battles out there, because I've experienced quite a few hardships in my life. I was homeless as a child, had a very rough upbringing, and if I would have been able to hear my story now at that age, if I would have known that there was light at the tunnel or light at the end of the tunnel, it would have given me so much more drive to get through that instead of just hoping I make it another day kind of stuff. So like I said, that's the stories I want to get out there. I want to be able to share those stories with people that just might need that little bit of extra encouragement. Like I said, if the podcast never reaches, the masses, but helps one person, cool, I did my mission, because I'm here to help. That's what I do for a living, is I help people within the gym, obviously, because that for me has been my biggest help, getting myself in shape and seeing what being physically fit and also playing sports has done for me socially, and getting me out of the situations that I was in as a youth. It's something that's if I can help other people get through those situations like that, I want to get my story out there. I want to get other people's stories out there, because like you said, there are people and great, amazing people that have these very valuable stories or lessons that they went through, that they were fighting their own battles.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So hopefully that hope that you had as a kid is the pickaxe that creates that light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
And so if you can help give somebody the strength to wield their own axe and get through that hard rock of life to see that daybreak through the rubble, then that is how you give back, not only to that kid who didn't know, but to all the children and adults who might not know. That sharing your story, getting other people to share theirs, you just don't know what somebody needs to hear.
Absolutely. And that could be on a day-to-day basis. I mean, you could just help someone at a grocery store and be like, oh, say something kind to them, and that might be the one thing that helped them get through that day. Yeah. They say something as simple as sharing a smile can help somebody get through their day.
I think one thing that is important that's happening now, and everything has its positive and negative elements, but I think overall this impacted really podcast space, and it seems like everybody's talking.
Yeah.
You're on whatever platform you're on, everybody's talking. You're making reels, you're doing TikToks, or on Twitter or X with their, you're on every platform, everybody's saying something. So it is hard sometimes not only to differentiate yourself, but to find the voices that are speaking to your experience, or you're open to hearing experiences from other people, because it's so much out there that celebrity can sometimes drive your focus. And there are people who have maybe not as big a name or big a profile, but have something to offer. And I like that so much conversation is being had, that if there's a perspective you need, you can probably find it.
Yeah.
If there's an experience you're having, you can probably find somebody having a very similar experience and realize you're not alone. This is what I believe social media and the world is so much smaller now than it was when I was growing up.
Absolutely.
That's the most major benefit to it, that there isn't as much othering and disassociation from people around the world. We really do know, and it's an odd time to be saying that right now, because it seems like there's so much division just here domestically. Yeah. But the truth is, we're getting a real good look at each other here and around the world. Now, you might not like what you see, but at least you're seeing it, so nobody can tell you that those people over there are like this and you have no personal firsthand experience of how to perceive people, or even an opportunity to communicate with them. You know, there used to be, way back in the day, yes, even before my time, was like pen pals and shit. Like,
did you ever do that in school?
What's that?
Like, did you ever do that in school? Like, have projects like, oh, we're gonna get pen pals in I was born in LA. I grew up in New Mexico.
Yeah.
But like for like class projects, like for like, I'm sure they're just like writing assignments. But we would have like pen pals in a school on the other side of the country or whatever.
That's right. I may have been too young for the pen pal, but we did have the exchange student.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There we go.
This is like
same.
It's same.
But
that was
different.
a big deal to have somebody from another country staying in your house, or you could go stay in another country in some other culture. And so that was as close as you could get to having a firsthand experience with another culture.
Right.
It was a huge deal. Now, your exchange student, you're following 7,000 of your exchange students.
Yeah, no shit, right?
So that, I believe, ultimately might make the world a much more unified place.
That's potential for
as
it, sure.
the generations become accustomed to that from birth through life. We're still, like, there's people like me and you, we're not old. But in the fact that we're not old and still remember a time before that means that our early experience, our kind of sedentary foundation for how we see the world, is still rooted in that.
Yeah.
And right up under us is coming a generation who don't know shit about exchange students or pen pals or disassociation from the world. It's always been available to them all the time. And I believe that, again, everything has its positive and negative. They're going to have to come through some of their sensitivities and a bit, get a bit harder shell, I think, at times. But they're also they're gonna be better people.
Right, yeah, they're probably gonna be more well-rounded.
Get there
more experienced.
And find the balance. And so, I hope to see the world become a better place, and maybe all the strife that's happening domestically in multiple countries is the breaking point where we figure out even these boundaries of country and state and even continent are really artificial. Like the fact that I had the privilege of traveling the world because of the work I do let me know that a plane ride's a plane ride, man. Whether if I'm flying from LA to New York, it takes me the same time that it takes me to fly from New York to London, which takes me the same time to fly from New York to Saudi. If I'm spending 7 hours on a plane, what the fuck is the difference whether I'm leaving from LA and ended up in New York or New York and London? The difference, it's like people think of leaving the country as like, oh, I'm leaving the country. It's exactly the same amount of time on the same flying tube, and where you land can be anywhere.
Yeah.
People around the world are essentially, at the root and core of it, the same, and they are shaped by different experiences and rooted in different cultures. But if you go and experience those cultures and meet those people and take the initiative to get outside of your comfort zone, whether that be your neighborhood, state, or even country,
your clique,
you'll find a lot more about yourself, because you'll see yourself in people that you didn't think you had anything in common with.
Yeah.
That, I think, is the greatest gift of travel, is realizing that no matter where you go, there you are. Not just you are there, but man, there I am.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, that guy's me too.
See, I always thought it was just the food was the best benefit of traveling, but yeah, man, I just see meeting the people too.
See, you pulled me up on that one. I'm not a foodie. Like I will go around the world
for as much as you travel.
Shit.
Wow, yeah, pizza everywhere.
Meat, potatoes, milk, eggs. That's it. I'm into olives right now, to be fair.
That's weird.
I,
You pregnant? You got weird cravings?
I got an olive guy. Listen,
No
I got
way.
like
Yeah, you got a
I got
plug?
a connection. Yeah.
Yeah, an olive plug. That's hilarious.
I don't know.
Man, that's,
but-
you do the finger still? The olive finger?
No. But now, that's
Yeah,
an
right.
interesting one.
Yeah.
A little puppet show. I didn't like, because also as you mature, sometimes your taste change and stuff. I was never like really loving that particular food
Yeah.
with olives. But then I
still
happened
don't.
upon this farmer's market in London. Found this guy who was like, he's like making all pickled garlic and he's mixing it with feta and and like all these. And I was like, all right, let me try it.
Give me some.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I know it sounds super weird because it is, but that little thing, this olives that he spent so much time making herbs and all this stuff to make it really delicious, that was the way we were able to communicate, in that he imparted to me, he's Greek, a bit of his culture that
Yeah.
I would never have thought I would like so much.
Yeah.
And I liked it enough till I would go back to the farmer's market every week. And now because I travel, he only is in the farmer's market for 2 days a week, and it's Friday, Saturday. Okay, I know this is going to be a long story about olives,
I'm here
but
for
it's
it.
not about olives. It's about the
There's a
fact
life
that
lesson.
I can't get these olives while I'm traveling to shoot fights, because fights are on Saturday. I'm definitely there by Friday. I got to leave Monday.
Yeah.
So then what I had to do was make a friend of the guy.
Yeah.
I had to be like, yo, I got to get these olives so I can travel with them on days that you're not at the market. Now I go to his house. I've met his wife, his
Oh, wow.
family. We're friends. I understand a lot about Greek culture and his experience because I tried something abroad that seemed completely typical thing that you
Yeah.
might do. And it made a friend that was in it. We're both in London. Neither one of us are from there. He knows a lot more now about a Black American's experience and what I'm doing in London. I know a lot more now about a Greek who's come to London and found a way to build family and business, and his story.
Yeah.
And that's how the fucking world works, man.
Yeah,
You
that's a sick
gotta
experience.
do that for yourself so that you can understand all the people in the world and the different stuff that you don't know shit about, but then you find out I can have a friend who's like a 65-year-old olive dealer.
Great guy. He had olive dealer slinging olives.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. What a great experience, though. I mean, but that's like such a genuinely like good story. Like that's something that like you'll feel in your heart forever. Like
Right.
meeting that guy, getting to know his family, befriending him. That's the real reason you're moving to London, huh? For the olives.
Yeah. I mean,
Guys, I gotta go. Austin's been
I
great,
gotta
but the
go.
olives are calling.
That's it. I gotta go where the getting is good, man.
I'm such a mindfuck when it comes to food because if I eat something, say you gave me olives and they were in something and I was just eating it and I didn't know that there are olives in it, I'd be like, oh damn, this is pretty good. But the minute you tell me there's olives in it, I'm like, I don't want it. Like, have you ever had frog legs?
No, fuck no.
Well, I had them once. To be honest with you, it tasted just like dark meat chicken. Like it's kind
Which
of
I
fatty.
also don't like. So
Same. I don't like. I'll eat it, but it's not my favorite.
Yeah.
But kind of like fattier and like almost like, for lack of a better term, slimier.
Yeah.
Tasted the same, but just sitting there eating it, like knowing that I was eating a frog, I'm like, this is
Gross,
gross.
bro.
I had a blood sausage in Colombia, and no Diddy, but I was sitting there eating and I'm like, oh, this is pretty good. And my cousin's like, yeah, it is good. Just don't ask what it is. And I was like, why the fuck do you have to say that?
Yeah.
And so the little bit of Spanish I do know, I was like, oh, I'm done. Like, I was like, I'm not eating this anymore.
Yeah.
Not a great, I mean, but the food there was great. My dad was from Colombia. So I was a little bit familiar with it.
Well, you gotta eat the fucking blood sausage then.
For sure,
All
yeah,
day.
yeah. I ate like way more like like chicharrones, like the pork
You're
fat. Like,
reconnecting with your heritage.
yeah, that's what it
man.
was. Yeah, that's what
Okay.
it was. minus the cocaine, but Colombia was great though.
Well,
Have you
then you didn't do it right.
right? Yeah, well, you got to go
You
back,
went all the way
sir.
to Colombia, ate fucking blood sausage and no rails?
No rails.
The fuck
yeah,
are you doing?
I messed up, man. It was a trivial time, I didn't want to mess things up. I didn't want to get stuck there.
Okay, fair play.
Although I have a lot of family there. Most of them speak quite a bit of English, which is nice. But it was wild because I got a tattoo when I was down there. And so many people are like, oh my God, you got a tattoo in Colombia. Like, was it clean? Was it sanitary? I was like, it's not a third world country.
Right.
Like, I was in
They
Bogota. which-
literally rubbed cocaine on it to disinfect
yeah,
it.
well, on the gums. And then we did the tattoo. But it was one of those things where like everyone was like, "Oh my God, you're going to Colombia?" I was like, "This was right after Narcos, like season 1," and I go out there wildly though. While we were out there, it was like one of the biggest drug busts they had had in like 20 years. The venue we were hosting my grandma's birthday at, like 2 weeks before that, they got like a bomb threat. Yeah. It was just kind of like a weird coincidence because like everything my dad passed away in '09, so this was long after he passed away. But like talking to him like in the '90s, like about going to Colombia, he's like, "No, we're not. I'm not taking you guys back to Colombia." But going out there, like everything we were reading and my cousins and family lived down there, like no, it's turned around, like it's a super safe country. But we go down there and we go out to my cousin. One of my cousins has like a ranch, like 45 minutes outside the city. We go out there, awesome experience, eating all the local food, and we're riding horses through the fucking jungle. It's raining on us. I was like, this is sick. We come across these two guys with like pit bulls and machetes, and I'm like, I don't know enough Spanish to get myself out of this situation, so I'm not going to make eye contact with any of them. I'm just going to look down at my horse, and the situation. Nothing came of it. My cousins were like, "Hey, talking, blah blah blah." We went through it.
Yeah.
But we come back, and we were staying at a close friend of the family. We were staying at their apartment, and they weren't there when we got dropped off. So I'm trying to connect to like the Wi-Fi through the wall, not being able to connect, and it's my little sister and I, and so we're just like, all right, fuck it. Like there was down there they have Juan Valdez coffee shops, like Starbucks, like they're everywhere, but it's Juan Valdez. And so I was like, there's a mall like a couple blocks down the road, like let's just go to there and hook up to the coffee shop and we'll go. And we walk down there. It's maybe like an hour walk down to the mall, and we get there, and finally my WhatsApp gets service when we connect to the Wi-Fi. And my cousins and aunts are just blowing us up, like, where are you guys? Your grandma thinks you got kidnapped, blah, blah, blah. I was like, damn, this shit is wild. But I was like, no, like I knew just enough Spanish to like get my way around. But Colombia is beautiful.
Yeah. All right. Well, now I know who I got to go with.
Let me know. Yeah, I'm going again. I think at the end of February. I'm sorry, end of January, early February. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think. Have there been any great Colombian boxers? Not really, huh?
I'm not going to say no, because boxing is the oldest sport on the planet, and I'm sure there have been none come to mind.
Yeah.
But
you're starting to see some MMA guys come out. No big names yet, but there's some MMA guys coming out of Colombia.
Yeah. Yeah. No, man. Kind of,
yeah.
But now maybe you're the guy. You're already holding mitts for people, so.
Yeah. Let me go down there and teach very poor Muay Thai. Yeah, right. That's what it will be. But we, so when I was working in Albuquerque, I did 4 camps with John Jones, and when he was coming back off of a suspension, he was getting ready to fight Alexander Gustafsson for the second time, and Gustafsson for an MMA fighter, had good boxing. So John brought in this kid. His name was Leon. I can't remember his last name. Big ass white Russian kid at the time. He was the number 3 heavyweight amateur in the U.S., but he's from Russia, big old Russian. He looked like Ivan Drago. I think his Instagram handle might even be Baby Drago. But he comes in, and I'm watching sparring rounds with him and John, and he had on at least 16-ounce gloves, maybe bigger, maybe 18.
Wait, does John Jones win this coming Saturday night? I think this is his first foray in a heavyweight.
This is second fight at heavyweight. First one, he choked out Cyril Gane, the French kickboxer.
Yeah.
Made it look as easy as most people expected. He took him down within like the first 2 minutes. In the first ground exchange, choked him out.
Okay, so now I don't cover UFC. If you didn't know that, then you would know by the fact that I thought this was his first time in.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I did read about it because I am hosting a fight party.
Oh, let's go. Here in Austin?
Oh, yeah, at the Soho House in Austin. 3 times a year, I do a fight party on property. It's a massive event. Usually it's boxing, but John Jones, I really want to do a UFC fight party. So this will be the first of its kind in that sense. And I read that the guy he's facing is supposed to be the greatest heavyweight ever, but John Jones is supposed to be, or considered to be, maybe the greatest MMA fighter ever. Yeah. So that clash, I'm like, okay, that narrative alone got me in, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to put my first UFC party is going to be John Jones for sure.
Oh, I love that.
And so that is why we got to handicap this thing. Because the other thing I got to do.
Let's talk about it.
I got to do prop bets. So now I'm good at making prop bets for boxing because I know the sport. I know what tends to happen, what could happen, what doesn't happen that often. So I'm gonna be tapping my friends, you among them, to give me some proper prop bets.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, a prop bet is like, does the fighter come out with his hood up or down?
Yeah.
Is both fighters gonna wear black?
John's got black and red shorts.
What's that?
John's got black and red shorts.
All the time, every time.
No, not every time. But he just released his shorts yesterday or the day before. They had their official fight pictures released.
Oh, you
Yeah,
already know.
Yeah, these are official.
Right, well,
so you can't, that one's off the table. His mouthpiece, if I had to guess, John's a friend of mine. I just saw online, I think yesterday. So there's a company in Albuquerque called Damage Control that does mouthpieces. In my opinion, they're the best in the game. Even I might be a little biased being from Albuquerque, but Damage Control does a really good job. Anyway, if I had to guess, I would say it's probably going to be a black mouthpiece, and in gold writing, it's either going to say Bones or Phil 413, the Bible verse.
Okay, so wait, does it go back and forth?
Yeah, he'll switch it up.
So there's a prop bet, right?
Yeah.
Will it say Bones? And then, you know what I mean? Like that kind of shit. So I do like 25. I come with for boxing shows, I come with like 25.
That's
and then
awesome.
you can win like dinner at Soho House and stuff like this. It's my favorite game.
Oh, man, I'm in on this.
Yeah.
This would be good. So, statistically, Stipe, the guy he's fighting, Stipe Miocic, has defended his heavyweight title more than any other heavyweight fighter. So that's why they say he's the greatest heavyweight of all time.
Right.
He's lost it and won it, and then lost it again. He lost it to Daniel Cormier, then came back and beat Daniel Cormier to get it. But John, anyone that truly knows MMA and really pays attention to the sport would say that John's the greatest fighter of all time.
So who's gonna win it?
John. If I were to Nostradamus it,
I mean, you said that without even thinking.
Yeah, John's gonna win it. I think he's gonna win in the second round via ground and pound.
Really?
Yeah, especially now that what's called a 12-6 elbow. You look at a clock, 12-6.
Oh, that just became legal.
Just became legal.
Yeah, okay.
And John's only one loss is because he threw that illegally early on in his career, and he told me he didn't know it was illegal. It was an early fight in his career. He also fought a guy that was deaf. And according to John, so this guy, deaf, had blood in his eyes, and John was he's like, I don't think he wanted out of the fight. I just don't think he knew what was going on.
Well,
so
if
they
you
called the
can't
fight.
hear or see, it's hard to know what's going on anywhere, much less in a fight.
yeah, exactly. But it's like when the ref was talking to him, I don't think he understood that the ref was asking, can you continue?
If he can't hear?
Can't hear.
Gonna be tough,
and you can't see, you can't really, maybe he's probably really good at lip reading. I want to say Matt Hamill was his name.
Okay, you know what? I feel like we're gonna get into trouble. You keep leading me down this road because this is ridiculous.
Yeah, but what's wild is with one of the elbows, so John did cut him with the elbow that eventually DQ'd him.
Yeah.
But one before that, John missed his face and just shattered the dude's collarbone. At the end of the fight, Hamill's sitting there in his Lou Ferrigno English, yeah, I think I dislocated my shoulder, and turns out John actually broke his collarbone.
Okay, Lou Ferrigno's a deep pull.
A lot of people know, if nobody gets that, Lou Ferrigno, a deaf bodybuilder. That
Incredible Hulk.
Well, you like that?
Yeah. I mean, sure, he was a bodybuilder and all that, but
he was Incredible Hulk for
Hulk.
sure. But that's kind of how Matt Hamill talks, is like Lou Ferrigno.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because he's deaf. Oh, I get it. Yeah, let's
it all
move
came
on.
back, right?
Let's move on.
I think hopefully I'm too early to get canceled.
I mean, hopefully they don't hear this show.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
All right, that's the last one. You got what I did anyway.
Yeah. But so having said that, I think John wins TKO, ground and pound, second round.
Yeah.
The real question for me, and this could be a prop bet maybe, does John retire after? Because it's in Madison Square Garden.
This could be his last fight?
Could be his last fight.
Win, lose, or draw?
Win, lose, or draw. If he wins, most people, like I said, already cement him as the GOAT, the guy, the greatest of all time. His one career loss was a DQ that is a rule that's not even illegal anymore.
Right.
People talk about Khabib because he retired undefeated, I want to say 29-0. But John Jones had more title defenses than Khabib had UFC fights. Khabib beat a lot of, I don't want to say nobodies because they're professional athletes, so I don't want to knock anybody for being a professional athlete. But a lot of people you wouldn't recognize their name, 23 people you wouldn't recognize their name, and then went on to go 29-0. So he did beat some legends. He beat a Dustin Poirier. He beat Conor. So he did beat some big names, but early on, he really padded his record early on in his career.
Right. Well, everyone watching this show has seen the day that I began my foray into MMA, particularly UFC. science and history of learning more about the sport than just like the cursory knowledge I have. It's not like I don't know anything about it. I
Sure.
watch UFC when I can. But because there's so much counter programming with UFC and boxing events, I seldom on a Saturday night am free to watch anything other than the fight that I'm covering on the night. So those things are always conflicting. So it's hard for me to stay informed, like know what's happening in mixed
like the
martial
deep
arts.
dive,
But I'm about to make the effort to really start to better understand it. I want to cover MMA, and I want to
Well, you know some good people
better
for that.
understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's before 2016, I honestly knew nothing about martial arts. Like, you could have asked me what's the difference between Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu. I would have had no clue. Up until that point, like I used to watch a lot of ESPN Classic boxing with my dad, like Frazier, Foreman, Ali fights, Ken Norton, like those kind of fights. And then I knew sumo wrestling, which technically is a martial art.
Sumo, one of the big PR people in boxing has taken on a sumo tournament. Like they were, so I was getting all this sumo wrestler shit about like covering sumo wrestling
Wild.
in New York. And so I didn't do it. I would have if I had been in New York. I'm not traveling to do it. But if I could have done, I would have done. And the thing that is interesting enough to me that's drawing me into the MMA world, and I would even get into the sumo world if it was convenient, is not just the action in the ring, as I've said before, but I want to understand the fight inside an MMA fighter, but particularly how they were drawn to that discipline, which for me is night and day, apples and oranges to boxing. I realize it's both combat sports, but they're on opposite ends of the spectrum. And I'll tell you what I mean is that boxing I consider a minimalist sport. You have a finite amount of tools for offense and defense, the fewest possible.
Yeah.
You understand? You can't kick, but you can use your feet for offense and defense. Obviously, positioning, angles, and the way you move around the ring has a lot to do with whether you're on offense or defense, keeping distance, all this kind of stuff, but they are not weapons. You have two weapons. Your opponent has the same two weapons, and those weapons are also used for offense and defense. So you have the least amount of tools, and you are permitted to use them in the least amount of ways possible. Simple defense, simple all your punching or your blocking. You know, and anything you can find, any little bit of advantage you can find in those two very limited ways you can use your two very limited tools is the difference between winning and losing. Whereas MMA, you have I would say infinite combinations of offense and defense and ways you can strike and be struck, things that you can do to be on offense and ways that you have to be on defense while you're on offense, and you don't know what your opponent is going to have in his repertoire because you couldn't possibly defend everything at once, and you can't possibly be a master of everything offensively at once. So that kind of chess match where there's so much possible, and now you've said that they've even added one more.
Two more.
What's the other one?
The other, you can now what's considered a downed opponent. Like
well, you can kick somebody
knee him
on
in the head now.
Knee him.
You can knee him. You used to be able to knee him in the body, which was always so cool because John is arguably one of the most creative strikers of all time. And there'd be times where he'd be like, if there's a guy up against the fence, he'd like push their shoulders back and like knee him in the chest or knee him in the stomach. You don't see guys do that because it presents the risk of kneeing him in the head. But now, in certain positions, not if they're laying on the ground, but a lot of times you'd see guys kind of like, I don't want to say cowardly, but like you would see them go into like a tripod stance where they're like their feet on the ground and someone kind of has their back, but they put a hand
so they
to the
can't
ground,
get hit,
just so they couldn't take a knee to the face. But now you can totally just
I
blast
bet those rules were implemented because they are dangerous strikes,
Oh, yeah.
and while you're trying to get UFC particularly on the main stage in front of a global audience, you want to make it not quite as brutal initially, so that people are objecting to certain kind of outcomes.
A little more
but now
welcoming,
that you've got such a massive audience and people are accepting this level of violence as sport, you can start to add a little bit more violence. You know, but what I want to understand is really the different mentality that it must take. And this is a real, I believe, scientific differential between a minimalist and someone who must consider everything. And so just that little difference in how you're
nuances,
approaching
yeah.
your discipline, I want to understand the difference in those guys.
It's wild, man. You see, it's very rare. Have you watched any of the early UFCs, like UFC?
Yeah, of
1?
course. I was. Yeah, of course. I was watching it like on the bootleg red box.
Yeah.
When we didn't even know if the shit was legal.
You're right.
We were
In some states it wasn't. Like
Right.
not until when Conor fought Eddie Alvarez when he won the 155 title. Up until then, and that was within the last 8 years or so, maybe the last 10 years for sure. But up until then, MMA was illegal in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as I said, I train boxing. Still to this day do that 6 days a week when possible.
Oh, nice.
It's a little tougher on the road, but I get it in. I consider the way that fighters approach their combat is also relative to the way I approach my discipline, which is conversation.
Yeah.
Which is what I like to think of as my being a conduit to the audience for the fighter to express themselves and also to build narratives around whatever upcoming fight there is or these two opponents on a journey, right? So again, the way that the difference between minimalist and considering everything, I look at how I approach a conversation and a narrative and what's needed in a moment of journalism the same way. I want to know if this is a minimalist moment or where I have to consider everything.
Yeah.
I want to know who I'm talking to, what space they're in, because some fighters bring everything with them to the ring. The argument they had with their wife, the kid that's on the way, their mother or parent that is possibly dying on, all, they bring it all and they focus all the energy that is coming at them, laser focus on the night towards this one opponent. And then other fighters, the opposite. They take everything and work hard to be a blank space where all that's in their mind is the fight on the night. And to me, everything has so much to do with the mental approach to what you're doing, whether it be physical or just audio, or if you're a runner and you're just out there on your own. It is physical, but you don't even your only opponent is your own time.
Is your mind, yeah.
Yeah, and so these things at this stage of my career and maturity as I learn are what fascinate me.
Yeah.
How all of the world works similarly and what I can take from every different experience. So of course I start with the experiences in my proximity that I understand best, and I want to extrapolate out from that learning.
Yeah.
That to me is what is necessary now in the world, and for me personally, we got to learn each other so that we can know ourselves.
Yeah.
So as there's a lot of division in the world right now, which we don't have to talk about specifically, but everybody
especially
knows
this
that.
week.
Yeah, particularly. I mean, it's never been more glaring than this week.
Well, it kind of goes with what you're saying about how small the world seems now with social media. We are now seeing how mad everyone is or how excited everyone is, whatever. Right. And it's in your face. It's in your face 24/7, unless you put your phone away and turn your TV off. Go outside. It's still beautiful out.
Right,
yeah.
Right. And now that, whatever, the score is what the score is, maybe instead of fucking predicting the doom of society because you're losing on the scoreboard, or fucking dancing on your opponent's grave because you think nobody can say anything to you now because you're so ahead. How about now we learn about each other and understand why one thinks this, that, the other thinks that, and are willing to have a moment where it's like, okay, you gotta accept what it is. And also, what it is can change in a heartbeat. Just because certain people are in control doesn't mean that they have to maintain the mentality that got them the control. I would say it's a test of leadership, whether or not, because you're in power, you can now build a bridge of communication, offer an olive branch with being magnanimous, instead of egomaniacal,
Mm-hmm.
and determine what is best for the greater good is probably a conversation that begins to rebuild a community of connection. If we remain dug in on our opposite ends of the spectrum and just all we do in the middle is fight, then there really is nobody. There's only going to be up and down. You're up right now. These motherfuckers will be up. Then they're going to be the same pieces of shit that you were when you were up. And that is just
that's the tough part, man.
ongoing pendulum swing that gets you nowhere moving forward. You're just making lateral moves.
Agreed.
So because when you're up, it's kind of incumbent upon you to reach out and, you know, let people kind of feel like there is some balance that will be restored, that you're interested in that. And when you're down, you can't be so depressed and so down that you can't reach up and take the hand. If it's if the olive branch is out there, don't feel so heavy that you can't grab it, or hate these people so much that you're unwilling to understand why they are the way they are, and maybe find what your commonalities are. It's a tough ask on both sides, but
it is, dude. And there's so much hate on both sides. You said, like, if you hate that person so much that you don't even want to grab the olive branch on either side. Like you said, the polar opposites are like the people, and what's sad is those are the people you see online are the polar opposites. There's so many people in the middle ground. I would like to think at least that there's so many people in the middle ground, but what we see is the stuff that's clicked. You're wrong.
No. and all you need is an internet connection to find your cheering section.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So yes, the world is smaller. Yes, you have access to so much more information, so many more people. Travel is so much easier. Even it is not affordable for everybody, but affordable to enough people to where most people, if they made it a priority, could travel pretty extensively over the course of time. So with all that said, the comfort zone is the enemy. The fact that you could do all this shit, you could talk to these people, you could find out more, but why? Oh, I've got a whole chorus saying the same shit I like to hear and having the same experiences that I'm having, and all we need to do is meet up on this social media page or on my channel and on my show and talk about our shit and fuck everybody else.
Yeah.
I can find all the people who agree with me the same way I can find all the people who disagree with me. And if you don't have the motivation or understand the value of finding the people who disagree with you and having those conversations too, and all you want to talk to is your cheering section and your chorus, then you're not growing, you're not learning, you're comfortable, you're happy, but it's not making the world a better place.
Yeah, you're just in an echo chamber.
And that's right. And you're just another fucking echo.
Yeah, which is a terrible thing to be. And one of my favorite quotes is, a comfort zone is a beautiful thing, but nothing can grow there. Spot on. Like how do we grow as a society is trying to understand each other, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's kind of something that goes so hand in hand with fighting. I think that's why, like,
make the adjustment.
Yeah, man. It's there's so many like correlations between like fighting and life. You know what I mean? Like,
of course.
Yeah. I mean, kind of like we've already touched on a little bit how everyone's fighting at some level.
I like to say fighting is the only sport that you're born knowing how to play.
Oh shit, I like that. It's true though, man. I had a post not that long ago. I mean, actually, it was probably a couple years ago now that I think about it. But talking about like growing up the way I grew up, like I always felt like I was pretending to be someone else. I was pretending to be popular. I pretended to have money. I was, pretending to be whatever. I was like, the one thing I never really felt like I had to pretend to be was a fighter. Like I was like, it wasn't, as soon as I got into fighting, it's just something that I was like, oh, this is something different. Like I said, I've trained Muay Thai for about 8 years now, which is called going back to like the specialist of boxing and how limited you are with your tools. It's the art of 8 limbs, Muay Thai, because you have legs, hands, elbows, knees, all that you can strike with. So the art of 8 limbs, and then there's a sport called Lethwei, which they say is the art of 9 limbs because now you can start throwing in headbutts. Yeah, that's in Myanmar.
What's it called, Lethwei?
Lethwei, yeah, it's in Myanmar.
Where do they do that at?
Myanmar. So the Far East. But bare knuckle Muay Thai with headbutts. I forget how long their rounds are. If you get knocked out, your corner can call a timeout to wake you back up.
Yeah, first of all, if they gotta wake you up, the fight should be over.
Well, yeah, 1,000%.
It's not a timeout. It's a time over.
Yeah, time over.
Also, I want to just point of order. While you brought up bare knuckle boxing, obviously I am in traditional boxing, have been for the trajectory of my entirety, I should say, of my career. And now I am seeing boxers, as they retire out of boxing, find bare knuckle as their next platform.
Yeah.
Do not do it. Bare knuckle boxing is not a retirement plan for traditional boxing. It is a meat grinder.
Yeah.
I covered one bare knuckle fight.
Which one?
It was years ago in Florida. It was
Okay.
Was
it Mike Perry?
No, you know what it was? It was Paulie Malignaggi.
Oh yeah. Who did he fight?
Dude, I just remembered it was Paulie Malignaggi.
Yes, yeah, I got one name.
Yeah, but that's why I covered it, because
Yeah.
Paulie was doing it.
But he fought another name.
Yeah, you know, it was a big name.
Yeah.
But it was a big bare knuckle name, I think. So
Yeah, it was Mike Perry.
I covered that fight, and then I covered the whole card, of course. And after each fight, I would go into the dressing room, because there's not a whole bunch of press
Media,
doing
yeah.
these fights. So you just go in the dressing room. I couldn't tell the difference between. I had to look and like, who won this shit? Because both of these guys look like they got hit by a car.
Yeah, broken hands,
Broken
blood
hands,
everywhere.
cuts everywhere, fucking swollen, bloody faces. The winner.
Yeah.
I'm describing the winner.
The loser
Man.
didn't make it. R.I.P. No.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and to Paulie's credit, he won the fight.
Yeah.
Which I was like, once I seen how the undercard fight was going, I was like, you should get out of here.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
like, there's the door, bro. I know where the back door is. I will cause a distraction.
Yeah,
so
I'll
you
pull the
can get
fire
out of
alarm so
here."
you can run, dude.
Yes. But he went out there and won it. I think that is such a brutal, brutal way to fight
out.
and
Yeah.
to make a living. It's not a huge amount of money, and I think you just know how to fight, so you figure out, all right, let's take the gloves off, I keep this going.
Yeah.
And I just saw El Perro Angulo.
Yeah.
You know, Alfredo Angulo, one of my favorite guys in boxing, was bare knuckle brawling. He won his fight too, but I'm like, man, I want them to have a better post-career life
Sure.
than that.
Yeah.
And I know money's money, but I think collectively in the combat sports community, boxing, MMA, Muay Thai, bare knuckle, you know, whatever that crazy shit you just mentioned.
Left way.
Left way, yeah. We need, as a collective, to come together and figure out how you can sunset a combat sports career into a quality of life.
Most other major sports have some sort of like retirement plan.
Yeah.
Like if you in the major leagues, if you made it to your tenure, like you get I forget what it's called after that, but you get paychecks monthly once you've done, like having a good,
like a pension.
A pension. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. I feel like you see I haven't seen too many boxers go into bare knuckle boxing, but you're seeing a lot of MMA fighters transition to bare knuckle boxing because it actually does pay better. Once you're like a higher level, like a Mike Perry has made more money in bare knuckle boxing than he ever made in the UFC.
It's closer to MMA than it is to boxing to me.
Hand-wise, for sure. Yeah.
I mean, but that's a big deal. Like, people don't really think about how big a deal it is to have gloves that are at least 10 ounces. Sometimes.
Do they all use 10s in boxing, or is there a size where they go to 8?
Down to 8. It could get down to 8.
Smaller guys, though, you don't see big guys going in 8s.
Right, yeah. But I'm saying, you know, the fact that 10, 8, even that amount of padding.
Not a lot.
Yeah, but it's different.
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah, 4-ounce gloves.
And then even those fucking the 4-ounce UFC gloves, it's different than knuckles.
Yeah.
I mean, even though they have hand wraps, but that ain't doing nothing.
Yeah, because the hand wraps aren't over the knuckle. Yeah, they're like the hand wraps like around here.
Is it?
In bare knuckle? Yeah.
The
hand wrap does not.
Literally bare knuckle.
Yeah. They like so. A couple of my former clients and one of my really good friends is actually in bare knuckle right now. But like John Dodson, he fought for the 125 title twice in the UFC against Mighty Mouse, who is on the Mount Rushmore of MMA. Some really, really good like early on UFC fights, and now he's the 135 champ in bare knuckle boxing. And then a good friend of mine, Mark Entenberg, professional Muay Thai fighter. Him and I fought on the same card actually. He's in bare knuckle boxing now, but he's a guy that like just loves it. He loves like the brutal aspect. He's well educated, smart guy, business owner, but like just fucking goes out there and just loves to lay hands on people. And it's interesting because he's such a nasty kicker. Like I said, he's a professional Muay Thai fighter, and I've trained with him a bunch. But now he's just gotten into bare knuckle boxing, and it's a blood sport. The first one I saw, I was in Denver, Colorado. It was the first one I saw in person. And we missed the prelims because we didn't really care too much. But it was Luke Rockhold and Mike Perry was the main event. Eddie Alvarez and Frankie Edgar. These are all like MMA big names that were the co-main event. To start the main card was 2 heavyweights, and they're just fucking slugging. I look at my friend my friend David, he's a former professional baseball player. We look at each other because they finished the 4th round. It's Ben Rothwell, former UFC fighter, and I can't remember the other guy, but he was local to Denver, so the crowd wanted him. And they're beating the shit out of each other, and neither of them are going down. And the 4th round ends, and this was both of our first times like watching it, and we're like, oh shit, this is going to a 5th round. And he looks at me, he's like, dude, this isn't safe. Like we're just like watching these giant men bare knuckle beat the crap out of each other, and we're like, yeah, it was one of those things where I was like, I don't really know how I feel about this anymore. I've gone to a couple events because like I said, I now have friends that are in it, and it's the bare knuckle's different, dude.
Yeah. I'm not with it.
Don't get me wrong. It's right. It's not a retirement plan. Yeah. It's the exact opposite. It's you're just trying to get more paychecks. And
I have another question. So, what inspired you to book me as a guest?
Man, I saw the way the way you came about, like the way you took the unconventional route to being a reporter. Because that's something that I've always, because I heard you say on one of the episodes you did with Rogan. Where like back in the day, the only way you could get into it was either being a former fighter or having like a broadcaster background.
Right.
And that's something that I've always thought because I've always loved talking sports. I've loved talking the sports I know. I'm not going to go out there and talk about soccer. I don't know soccer. But you put me in front of a TV and watching baseball games, my mom laughs all the fucking time because I'll say something like, say we're watching an MMA fight. And I'll be like, oh man, the way he set up that leg kick was really nice. And then 10 seconds later, John Anik, the way he set up that leg kick was really nice. And my mom's like, that's fucking spooky.
Everybody thinks they can be a fucking.
No, I'm not saying I can.
But what I do like is that the gatekeeping nature of network television is a thing of the past.
Yeah.
You can create your own audience. Mm-hmm. You can test out your theory. Now, you might not be able to, from your living room, call the baseball game or the fight or whatever for an audience in that sense, but you can create a watch along. Mm-hmm. And if you can supplement the audio of the broadcast for your own, if people would rather turn the TV on but listen to you, you can call the show, right?
Yeah.
And what is most likely happen if you really do build an audience like that, then maybe the network comes knocking on your door. And then you probably will be making so much money on your own with your own audience that you don't want to give that audience to them or become like a company man. This is one of the things that the advent of social media, because YouTube existed even before social media, really, unless you want to consider YouTube social media, which I don't. I consider it a platform broadcast. It's like you are now able to create your own broadcast of whatever it is that you wanted. And of course, like anything else, it evolved. It started out with like silly shit that wasn't, I won't say thoughtful. It was just like, well, what are we going to do with this new toy?
Yeah, right.
And then you started to learn what the new toy could do.
Yeah.
And you began to find content on it that was more developed thought. And
and independent thought.
And you found stars who would not have gotten through the process that network or film or television were putting people through and would not have made it past the gatekeepers.
Yeah.
Right? And so now what are we looking at? Television, like broadcast television, it's a dying entity. Nobody's watching appointment television anymore. What comes on at 8 o'clock on any day of the week? Yeah. Nobody fucking knows. When you were a kid, you could have told me what your
Simpsons.
shows were.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
Simpsons, A-Team, whatever it is.
Right. I gotta be there.
I gotta be there at 8 on Tuesday.
TGIF. Did you ever watch TGIF?
Come on, dude.
Yeah,
of course.
Silly question.
Of course. You know, the big Thursday lineup.
Saturday morning cartoons.
It wasn't that long ago where, Seinfeld and Friends.
Cheers.
You had to be in front of your TV at a certain time. And the people who were big stars were decided by who was in those time slots on those days.
Yeah.
And nobody else. Yeah. Right? So that, I believe, because I am a pioneer of the way boxing is covered now, still network sports channels don't cover boxing day to day like they do all the other major sports.
Right.
If something happens in baseball, basketball, football, even out of season, there's a segment on it on Sports Center. There's a segment on it on any given sports channel. And then there's ongoing year-round programs dedicated to these sports, even when they're out of season.
There's a whole ass MLB network, NFL network, Golf channel. Yeah.
That is not true for boxing.
Yeah.
The lion's share, the heartbeat of boxing is online contributors, journalists that are covering the sport day to day, interviewing fighters, going to these fight weeks, posting about what's happening, keeping the audience, keeping the fans, the paying fans informed about the narrative so they stay invested in whichever fights are being made.
Yeah.
That is a grassroots journalism event that only happens really consistently online. That's what I started by beginning with Gym Wars and doing interviews with fighters and putting them on Max Boxing's website, and then finding YouTube as a broader platform beyond websites. I think like YouTube in a lot of ways killed websites and became this broadcast platform where you could now find the image of and the voice of the actual athlete, the actual star, the fighter, the whomever you wanted to hear from in their own voice. It didn't have to be filtered through a writer.
Right.
You know what I mean? It wasn't so unique to, okay, 1 hour on network television and there's a 1 hour show and that guy gets 15 minutes edited down to whatever that network wants to show.
Yeah.
Those fighters and those athletes of that era didn't really have a voice. You don't think about it because it was what was available then, but so many of the iconic, legendary athletes, you never really had an opportunity to get to know them for real. They never had enough bandwidth to be able to express themselves on a daily basis through their own lens. Nobody had their own channel, their own Instagram, their own anything.
Yeah.
They had to go through the machine. And if the machine said, you're not a voice that we want to allow people to hear anymore, you're silent. No matter how loud you're talking. Like the few who were able to break that mold are the people that we know as icons, like a Muhammad Ali is breaking that mold.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? These are the kind of voices that were so few and far between that were able to draw attention to who they were and were talked enough and enough platforms and were sought after enough to have a full voice for the trajectory of not just their career, but their life.
Yeah.
Think how unusual that is.
Yeah.
How rare that was. And now how plentiful it is. You can't, like I said, everybody's talking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you see a lot of those guys. You see like a Chael Sonnen, former UFC fighter and Bellator fighter, but now he's with ESPN. But like he started off as his own. Oh, dude, so funny. I agree with like a lot of the shit he says, but like he's so brash. Like you love it. I love it.
But he's also a shock jock in a way.
Yes.
He's not. You know what I mean? He's poking and
he's probably like way different. Like if
purpose.
you know him on a personal level, like he's probably a little more chill. Hopefully, I don't know, maybe not.
But I think he knows the game he's playing. Like
sell tickets, and he's big on that. He'll be the first to like call out a fighter like, hey, you're undefeated, you're number 3 in the division, you're not talking enough. Like, sell some tickets, get your name out there. Like, get your, like, he's big on promotion. Chael is. You think Ali's the GOAT?
I mean, yes, in the sense that GOAT means greatest of all time. Doesn't mean best, doesn't mean most technically proficient, doesn't mean the best record. It means the greatest. And when you get into greatness, you have to transcend whatever platform you were introduced through. The being the best anything doesn't make you the greatest anything.
Yeah.
You could be both. That's a super rarity.
Yeah.
But it doesn't define one the other. And so Muhammad Ali transcended boxing and became the greatest impactful person that ever came from the sport.
Yeah.
That is what makes him the greatest of all time, because his impact on the sport was outsized by his impact on the world, which elevated the sport itself and then made what he did in the sport so much more important.
Yeah.
That is the greatest.
I like that. Yeah. Because people want to have that argument with Conor, like, oh, he never defended his titles, yada, yada, yada. I was like, but man, nobody sold like Conor sold. Like, he impacted the sport on such a high level. Now, again, I think as far as...
Listen, not to cut you off, but
No.
Floyd Mayweather
50
made more money, has an undefeated record, has a resume that nobody in their right mind can say is not stellar.
Yeah.
He's arguably the best defensive fighter. He's not the greatest, but he is the most emulated business-wise. He has changed the sport because every fighter since him has wanted to use his blueprint.
Yeah.
They're not using the Muhammad Ali blueprint, not in boxing or outside the ring even. Everybody wants the Floyd blueprint.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to figure out how to make that kind of money and have that record.
Yeah.
And have that record while fighting up until the very end. The very last of Floyd's fighters are hard for me to defend. But
Yeah.
that aside, he is by far the earningest, most influential for the next generation of fighter, how they pursue their career, that boxing has had.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to argue with me that makes him great, then I'll have that argument with you. For my definition, you got to transcend boxing, and that wasn't done with the money. The money was a way that he has influenced boxing and every fighter who's come after him.
Yeah.
So that is why he is in a category unto himself. He is potentially the best defensive fighter and by far, without any question, the best businessman boxing has ever seen.
Yeah.
That is something you can't take from him, and that is something that you see evidence of in every fighter after him. What I see evidence of in every person after Muhammad Ali is a little bit of what Muhammad Ali was, which was greatness. I see people outside of sport, period, trying to emulate the man that Muhammad Ali was.
Yeah.
That, sir, is greatness.
Yeah, that's like you said, transcending the sport. Yeah, like when you're a cultural icon, which Muhammad Ali was at that time.
But
totally
it still
different.
is.
Yeah,
Never
still is.
hasn't
Sorry,
been.
yeah, still
That
is.
is my point.
For sure.
People are born today who, by the time they're our age, will still be reaching to the Muhammad Ali's idol as something to aspire to.
Yeah.
As a man, as a person, women alike. That, come on, man.
Wild.
Dude, that's great.
Yeah, I always thought for sure. I asked the question because I was like, I obviously know not near as much boxing as you do, but the little bit I do know, I always liked saying, just to throw out there for shits and giggles, like Rocky Marciano, 49-0 with 46 KOs. Like, how can you argue against that? But it's like, we don't have a lot of footage of Rocky Marciano. Like, that was black and white times. It's like, for my money, I would have said Muhammad Ali as well.
Right.
Yeah.
To be fair, I think Floyd's 49-0 also.
Is it 49-0?
No, he's 50-0 on the cards, but because I'm not counting Conor McGregor.
Oh, that counted? I didn't even know that fucking counted. Now he's doing like spectacle fights, right?
Well, those don't even count. Those are like exhibitions, but I'm not giving him Conor McGregor for the record.
Okay, yeah.
that is bullshit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So he would be furious to hear this. But I say 49-0 because Conor's not. It shouldn't be on your boxing record. It's the first boxing match he ever had against. He
did better than in my
the pound for pound number one.
Yeah, and again, arguably one of the GOATs.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like that G in it. One of the best.
Boats.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's a boat.
One of the boats.
Best of all time. Yeah, he's a boat.
You might have just coined some shit.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that on a shirt now.
Yeah, right. All right, we'll share in the merch. We'll share. All right. We got there together,
can do this.
right?
We figured it out together.
We got there together.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's hilarious.
Wait, what was Joe's special? Burn the boats?
Yeah, burn the boats. Yeah, right.
Oh,
fuck. Yeah, there can be only one. It's Highlander.
Yes.
I'm assuming you watched the Conor and Floyd fight, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
This stupid question. Do you think Conor did better than you expected?
I thought that he was going to be able to be carried as far as Mayweather wanted to carry him.
as far as he wanted him to go?
Yeah, as long he did very well in the cradle.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
get
hilarious.
the fuck out of here. He fucking carried that guy to 10 rounds because he bet on round 10 and made that fight happen for as long as it was happening so he could make his money and knocked it out exactly when he wanted to. I feel like he could have knocked out McGregor in the first, second, third, fourth, and I will take you all the way to the 10th round at any point.
When he did finish him.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it was fixed in the sense that Conor was in on it.
Right.
I just think
because Conor was trying.
Yeah, he was trying.
Yeah.
But it's like your little brother trying, you're holding his fucking forehead.
Yeah.
He's going to land the first punch he lands when you decide to let your hand off his forehead.
Yeah, let him feel good about himself.
And so Floyd decided, he's going to hold his head there until the 10th round and then fucking kick him in the chest and then the fight's over. The Conor had no shot from the beginning, and in the 10th round, it happened when Floyd wanted it to happen.
Yeah.
You will never convince me of anything other than that.
Yeah.
That is no disrespect to Conor because it's his first boxing match. Yeah. That's as good as he should have been able to do.
Right.
Now in Ngannou,
I was gonna say,
facing
yeah, well, let's go to
Fury,
Ngannou
that
and
is a
Fury.
different story, right? I
Yeah.
don't believe that Ngannou was carried by Fury. I think Ngannou had a hell of a night, and he was ready for a Fury who was ill-prepared and took the most advantage of it that he possibly could. That was an anomaly. That happened that night, and I don't think that happens on any other night.
Yeah.
And the reason that you know I'm right is because the next night
got slept. Bad.
Without pretense.
Bad.
Like,
yeah, he might still
that's
be
what was supposed to happen the first night. So, and I don't think you'll see him back in a boxing ring at that level because that's what will happen every night subsequently.
Yeah, and he's made a triumphant return to MMA. He won the PFL title. He got paid a boatload. Like,
listen, you can never take that fight away from him that he had with Fury. And I'm not trying to do that now. Like, he showed up on the night, the opportunity was there, and he took that opportunity for all it was worth.
Absolutely.
And it was an entertaining fight until the end. We weren't sure. Like, man, he knocked him down. Close
decision, yeah.
I mean, like, that was real to me. I mean, you know, there aren't many moral victories in combat sports, and that was one of them.
Nice. Yeah, agreed. I agree. What's funny, I was going to ask you, what do you think next about Tyson and Paul?
This is another fight that I will be there. I will cover it. I am invested in this thing happening on Netflix. I think that's an incredible platform. It's in Dallas at the Dallas Cowboys Stadium.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's going to be packed to the rafters. For me, the real fights are the undercards, which aren't going to get nearly as much visibility, but are very important, particularly the co-main event, which is Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor.
That's Jake Paul's girl, right?
It's a rematch. Well, I wouldn't call her Jake Paul's girl.
Sorry. You know,
I would say he promotes Amanda Serrano.
That's what I mean by that. Yeah, that's what I meant by that.
And that fight is going to be a damn barn burner. Like, that's a rematch. And the first fight, I would have given the first fight to Serrano, but the cards went to Katie. I think a lot of people feel the way I feel. A lot of people feel like Katie, edged it. So that's what makes a great rematch.
Yeah. And
that, to me, is going to be the show stealer. In reference to the main event, I'm very curious to what we're going to see, because I've said this from the beginning, even when Logan Paul was talking about fighting Mike Tyson, it's a terrible idea for the Paul, because to me, it's a no-win situation. It's like, if you get knocked out by a 58-year-old anybody, Mike Tyson,
probably the most dangerous 58-year-old out there.
It's humiliating.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know that there's a comeback from that. Like, that's it. And this guy has so many opportunities beyond this fight to fight other people, to keep his brand going, to keep packing stadiums. Like, Jake Paul's entertaining. He's an incredible promoter. Half the people are showing up to watch him lose. The other half are watching him win. He is a businessman. He is a combat athlete.
He's an entertainer.
And he's a damn good promoter.
Yeah.
And so he's going to be able to continue making money. But this fight, if it ends up with him being stretched out on the canvas, it's going to be hard to maintain that brand. And I fear it may be hard to maintain interest.
Yeah.
So as a businessman, as a business decision, I don't know that that's a great risk to take, because what's the payoff? To knock out a 58-year-old man, not just a 58-year-old man, but a 58-year-old icon,
legend,
who people love right now, who's overcome and come through so much adversity, who we have empathy for, who we are regarding as something of a hero, whose personality is affable, and we love the memory of the Mike Tyson we saw in the ring, which you will also destroy if you knock out him, even at 58. So then what happens? While Mike Tyson, 58-year-old Mike Tyson, is stretched on the canvas, what does Jake Paul do? Yeah, fuck yeah!
Yeah.
Are you celebrating that?
Yeah.
How are you celebrating that? The visual's going to be crazy.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, listen, it's a shit ton of money. Everybody's interested. I'm going to be ringside 1,000%.
That's awesome.
And so, to the point of, is that a good business decision? Like, can you make this a killing? Are you going to get people interested? Yes, clearly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's the day after that I'm worried about for both guys.
The fallout.
I'm also like, Mike, I get, other than the money, which is a big other than. I mean, it's a lot of fucking money to be like, other than the money. But okay, other than the money, what? I mean, unless you really think if what fighter wouldn't, but really think you're gonna knock this kid out and you're gonna have one more like super glory day. That's the for Mike. There's an upside if he can win it. That's incredible. Like, that's
Yeah.
unbelievable. If he
Yeah.
knocks out Jake Paul, who cares what
30
Jake
years
Paul's
younger
record
than him.
is?
Yeah.
What, this is a 30 years younger, like, active, young fighter.
Bigger size
who's-
difference.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you win. That's a big win.
Yeah.
But I worry, because I'm not getting any of the money. I worry about
I don't
his
have the other
safety.
then.
I worry about, like, I don't know if taking even one punch is worth it for me, because
Right.
I'm not getting any of the money.
Yeah.
So I don't want to see Mike Tyson hit by anybody. I don't want to see anybody. When he was with what's his little Hezbollah?
Oh, yeah. When he picked him up, it was like kissing
When
on his
Hezbollah
neck.
was punching
Punching
him, I
him,
was like,
yeah.
don't connect.
Don't
I don't want
connect.
to see Hezbollah hitting him, much less Jake Paul. So,
Right.
and I'll take you back to Ali Holmes.
Oh, yeah.
Larry Holmes is, I would say, the most underrated heavyweight in boxing. Larry Holmes
Interesting.
should be in the GOAT conversation
Okay.
of heavyweights for
Yeah.
sure. But he is the guy who ended Muhammad Ali's career. And when you thought about Larry Holmes during his prime, the image you had in your mind was him knocking out Muhammad Ali. And no one ever forgave him for that.
Yeah.
Even if you didn't actively hate the guy, there was something about his image of him slaying the greatest person of all time in boxing
Yeah.
that he couldn't shake. And I think for the rest of his career, he was haunted by being the guy who did that and everyone seeing him do that,
Yeah.
even though it makes perfect logical sense that that's what he's supposed
For
to
him,
do.
yeah,
Fucking
for sure.
Ali got in the ring. It's a boxing match. He wants, like, of course, what else are you going to do but knock the guy out if you can?
Yeah.
But the visual of it, the way you felt when you seen it, this is what I worry that Jake will be faced with if he does that to Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
People are not going to forget that feeling.
Yeah.
So I hope this is really entertaining. Both guys have their moments. At the end, it's something of a close draw where everybody comes out healthy and happy. They raise each other's hands. And we have like a, somewhere between a WWE and amateur boxing moment where it's just like, all right, cheers, we're all fucking having fun.
We all won.
And we all won.
Are they wearing 10s?
Tens, yes.
Yeah.
They're wearing 10s. They're 2-minute rounds. They're 8 2-minute rounds.
8 2s.
No
okay.
headgear. Knockouts are allowed. 10-ounce gloves, which is, a bit thicker than you might otherwise get. But 10 ounces is
will
not
still
enough.
sleep you.
That's not. I mean, I need 20.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was wondering. Are they gonna wear like 16s or something? But damn, 10. Yeah, because 10 with Tyson's or with Paul's power, with my
They
power.
need 20s.
Yeah.
And I'm still worried. I'm still
Yeah.
worried for Mike.
58-year-old brain.
I think Paul should wear 20s and Mike should wear
Yeah.
8s.
Dude, the first sports bet I ever made was Holyfield and Tyson.
Who'd you bet on?
I bet on Holyfield.
Really?
I did. Yeah, I was 8 years old. So let me start by saying I knew nothing. All I knew was at that time Tyson had, not the greatest name as far as like mid 90s Tyson, and not even in the ring. I'm saying outside the ring.
How did you know enough? How did you know enough at 8 to bet on Holyfield?
Because everyone else was betting on Tyson. I was at my
And
aunt's
your
wedding.
8-year-old was like, you know what? Everybody's going that way.
Yes,
I'm going this way.
$5.
Fuck off.
Dead ass. Dead
Who'd
ass.
you bet?
My uncles.
Okay.
Yeah, it was at my aunt's
Okay.
wedding. It was at my aunt's wedding. All the guys were upstairs watching the fight. There's a wedding going down. We were up there, and I mean, I'll give you my mom's number right now. You can call her and ask her.
I want to talk to your uncle.
Yeah,
I know
Uncle
your
Sam,
mom's gonna back
real
you up.
Uncle Sam. Mom will always take my side. So I remember that.
Yeah, Uncle Sam's like, little motherfucker. I
Yeah.
just gave him $5 so he didn't know what he was talking
Yeah, I
about.
gave him $5 when that Butterbean was fighting. It wasn't even a Tyson fight. But no, when he bit his ear, everyone was like, no. But that was the very first sports bet I ever made, and probably probably one of the first boxing fights I ever saw.
Interestingly enough, I would say the first fight that I realized that people don't know what the fuck is going to happen, no matter how much they talk like they do, was Tyson Spinks.
Oh yeah.
I remember that fight. I was fucking child. But that moment stuck out in my mind because it was such a big fight that I remember, even as a very young child, the build up to it and everybody talking about it and everybody having these opinions and nobody agreeing, and a lot of people thought Spinks was going to win that fight. And even the people who were picking Mike Tyson was like, it's going to be tough, and we like maybe he's going to lose, but if he wins, it's going to be like this, and it'll be by knockout late. And I remember all this conversation, and then I remember the fight being 92 seconds, knockout through the ropes. Obviously, like I was like, oh. That's like an epiphany moment.
Core
That's
memory.
like one of those core memories. Like, okay, all of that talk, and nobody was really. Nobody was like 93 seconds through the ropes.
First round, it's going down. Yeah.
So I kind of think that that's baked in the cake of my becoming an analyst and an orator in opinion and sport. I
like
realized like, oh, okay. I remember in that moment wanting to be the guy who did know.
Yeah.
And all of these adults, all of these boisterous, loud voices, all this arguing, none of them were right.
Yeah.
I was like, fuck, I want to be right.
Fuck these guys, I want to be right.
Yeah.
So I've always had the opinion, again, knowing John as I know John, and then his legacy within the sport. I've always compared, because when I'd watch the ESPN Classic fights, boxing fights with my dad, like even though I knew how fights went because they happened in the 60s, I was always like kind of a Joe Frazier guy, just because I like the dog, like the grinder, the guy that wasn't supposed to win kind of mentality. And so fast forward that to what I know now about MMA, I kind of compare it to John Jones and Daniel Cormier. Whereas in John Jones, like the GOAT, controversial, and then you have this guy, Daniel Cormier, who's just a grinder, does everything right. He came in and was beating everyone. And it's like he was almost just born in the wrong era. And I kind of felt that way about Joe Frazier. Like, man, if he wasn't in the Muhammad Ali era. Now, granted, he had Foreman and other names to get through. But for me, I was like, man, he was just in the wrong era. Whereas I feel like Daniel Cormier is in the wrong era.
Was he in the right era? Because the reason you remember Joe Frazier is those Ali fights. And without that kind of rivalry,
one of the best in sports history.
The name that you know what I mean? It's like, yes, you'd like to be the Ali of the Ali era. Yeah. But at the same
There's
time,
only one.
Because, and don't forget, Frazier won the first fight.
Did he break his jaw in that fight?
Yes.
He broke Muhammad Ali's jaw, right?
And those fights, I believe, are the ones that took it out of both of them. Like, neither one of them was the same after that fight. I also believe the same is true for Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury.
Oh, man.
I think those fights...
Wilder was definitely never the same.
Out of him. Right. Yeah, I don't think Fury's been the same
Probably not,
either.
right, yeah.
You know, don't forget, that's the Ngannou fight on the cusp of that.
Yeah, and then, because it was Wilder and Fury 1 where Fury was down for essentially the 10 count, right? Wilder dropped his ass?
Yeah. So, you know, they like trilogies, especially heavyweight trilogies, because the only reason you get a trilogy is because it is competitive.
Yeah,
because these guys are hitting so fucking hard. The same guys, it's hard to like not get hit because they're learning each other. So they're only going to, typically, not every time, but typically, the fights are going to get harder for the fighters.
You know each other better.
That's why, right?
Yeah.
So 3 fights for a heavyweight is a lot to be facing the same heavyweight.
Yeah,
you know. So
sure. It takes some days off your life.
Yeah. So that is, I think, one of the things that Roy Jones told me, of the many things that he has said of great wisdom, was that you don't lose your faculties from CTE in the ring. You lose them in the gym. It's the sparring that takes fighters apart, not what's happening in front of the cameras. So if what's happening in the front of the cameras is that brutal, imagine the kind of sparring that Ali and Frazier went through for 3 separate camps just to be able to be prepared for what would happen in that ring.
That's a great point. Grueling. And I've thought that, so kind of to tap back into when John brought in that big boxer for the camp against Gustafsson too. John's very, very smart about his training as far as taking damage. And there's times, because this guy, obviously, like I said, he was number 3 ranked amateur heavyweight at the time. And so he's laying hands on John, and John's like, I do not like the way that feels. I do not like getting hit like that. And that's even with like 16. They might have been bigger than 16s, but they're using big gloves. And John's like, I do not like the way that feels. You're starting to see it more in MMA. I don't know if, and I want to hear your opinion on this in boxing, but you're definitely seeing it more in MMA, that these more established fighters like a Max Holloway or a Cowboy Cerrone, Guys that know how to fight, they're starting to take out the hard sparring days. Like they're like,
Mhm.
yeah, I just went through camp and I didn't spar as much. Like I know how to fight. Like yeah, you want your timing and everything to be like on. He's like, but I don't need to be having 3 hard sparring days a week. Like I don't need to be
Yeah.
doing that. And
Yeah.
now is that the vibe in boxing, or is boxing still just laying leather on people?
I think what you're saying is true. There is a new approach to how much sparring a fighter should have.
Mm-hmm.
It does differentiate, of course, fighter to fighter, trainer to trainer, camp to camp.
Yeah.
But I think the more conventional wisdom now is bending towards less heavy sparring, but not less rounds of sparring,
Gotcha,
if that
yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, which is a good middle ground, because I do believe that sparring is necessary. Like, yes, it's damaging, but it is necessary.
Necessary evil.
And to what degree you take punishment in sparring might be able to be mitigated. But if you're in there taking too much punishment, then yes, it shortens your career. But if you're in there not in stiff enough competition that's testing you and pushing your limits, when it gets time for the big show, you won't have another gear.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
And so it's up to your coach, your trainer, you communicating, finding where the sweet spot is.
Yeah. Now, when you've obviously been around a ton of boxers. In MMA, when we get closer to fight time, like maybe probably more like 3 weeks out, we do what's called, some gyms call them Shark Tank, some gyms call them circles, but they're like 90% rounds, where you're like, all right, these are your hard rounds, and you stay in there for your 3 to 5 rounds, depending on how long your fight is, but every round you get a new fighter, right? Kind of like you were talking about earlier. But those ones are with the intent of, again, going like 85, 90%, like those should be your last hard rounds. Does boxing do anything like that, or just?
Again, it'll come down to like what the trainer's technique is, what their style is. I haven't heard anything like specific, I haven't heard anything specifically like 90% rounds, but I do know that there's light sparring and there's heavy sparring.
Yeah.
That's the biggest like differential I've heard. I haven't heard it in like percentages, but yeah, light sparring. And I think that light sparring goes further into camp now than it used to. So I think a lot of fighters get heavy sparring just as we're getting real close to the fight.
Gotcha.
As before, it would be from the gate.
Jump.
Like, you know, you're grinding for fucking 6-8 weeks. Nasty work.
Yeah, nasty work. What's your thoughts on headgear?
I think amateurs should wear headgear. I don't know what this bullshit is. Like, Olympic fighters should wear headgear. Amateur boxing should have headgear.
Yeah.
This is absolutely outrageous. Yes, of course it's more entertaining without headgear, but who gives a fuck? This is not, they're not being paid the way a professional is paid. I know that now there is some compensation in the amateur ranks, but not enough.
Yeah, is that more like sponsorship deals or
promotions?
To
be honest, listen, I know it's my sport, but I don't cover amateur boxing. I'm not entirely sure from state to state or whatever it is. I know that there's some money in it now that there wasn't before, but I also know that it's not even in the Olympics anymore. And it's in the LA
the
28 Olympics, we're not getting boxing unless something changes. And who knows when it comes back.
Yeah.
You need to protect these kids, and because like any other sport, most of them aren't going to make it.
Right.
And the damage that you get from fighting with no headgear, even with headgear, still a damaging sport. Yeah. So the idea that you would take headgear away, I don't know what the upside of that is. And for instance, I want 15 rounds for heavyweight championship or any championship
fights. Like MMA has more rounds for championship fights.
Right. Yeah. I think championship fight. Well, so does boxing, but it goes from 10 to 12. Whereas I think it used to be and should go back to 15. But the argument that the most persuasive argument I've heard from people who know the sport, if not better than me, at least as well, is that, well, it just paces the fight different, that fighters will pace for 15 rounds and it won't change the action that much. Whereas I disagree with that. The more persuasive argument is that's 15 more rounds of punishment when you're tired. That's 3 more rounds of punishment when you're hard pressed to defend yourself.
Yeah.
And the reason I want those other 3 rounds is because you'll get a lot more knockouts, I say, in those last 3 rounds than you're going to get at the 12-round stop. And the reason for that is, yes, because fighters are tired, because their defenses are waning, because those last 3 rounds, which used to be the championship rounds, which are still, to me, the real championship rounds, that's why. Because it is a tough 9 minutes to get through.
Yeah.
And so is it worth my entertainment to have more knockouts and to see a exhausted fighter get concussed where he otherwise would not have gotten concussed if the fight had stopped in 12 rounds because he was still able to defend himself and had been able to take a battering over those 12 rounds that he wasn't able to sustain over 15? Is it worth my entertainment? Is it worth it to the sport and to the fans or even to the fighter to take that kind of extra 9 minutes of punishment when they are the most vulnerable, the least able to defend themselves, and possibly can sustain the most damage? From the fighter's perspective, if we're going to protect the fighter, then the answer to that is no. From a fan's perspective, yes. From a journalist's perspective, I have to speak on both sides of the equation and still come down with no unless the fighters themselves are demanding it, and I'm not hearing that from them.
Interesting.
So the answer is no. At the same time, man, I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fights that ended with 12 that I believe that were tight that would have been decided and decisive if there were 3 more rounds.
Yeah.
Right?
That's like Nate Diaz's big thing because he's trained for like triathlons and shit, like Ironman competitions. He's always like, I didn't lose fights, I just ran out of time. Because he always finishes strong. Like when he fought.
I think that's Michael Jordan.
Is it? Okay, I was like, I don't know. I always
wasn't fights, but he's like, I never lost a game. I just ran out of time.
Ah, okay. I heard that from Nate Diaz.
I love Nate, by the way.
He's a
wild
he
man. Doesn't even know that's probably he just thinks he thought of that because
I thought of that. Yeah, that's how Nate Diaz is. But yeah, that's one of those things. Like, no, when you're scoring a fight, do you score when you're on the? I mean, obviously not like officially, but do you keep score like rounds? Like, do you have a paper?
Not always. Not always. I keep scores in my head.
Mentally,
you know. And then what happens is, if I am covering a fight I expect to go 12, I will pay more attention to keeping the score in my head. But I am also working with a company called Jabber, and we do punch stats and analytics for all the major fights. So that is an AI system that counts not only the punches landed, but the quality of the punch. It also is able to determine metrics that we've never had in the sport statistically before, like aggression and pressure. Separate those 2 metrics and calculate both individually. We are able to see how many punches were landed in combination, how many punches in the combination were landed. Because if you look at the naked eye and you see a guy throw a 4-punch flurry, especially if it's inside fighting, you're guessing what landed and what
hit an elbow,
and how
whether
it was clean or not. There's so much more information now available because of Jabber that scoring rounds, I believe, is a lot easier because you can look at all these statistics and break down these metrics and based on your criteria, determine who won the round. Because the thing about boxing, and it's true in MMA also, that there is no established full panel of criteria by which to judge a round. So it does come down to subjective judging. And so I think that subjective judging should be supplemented with factual statistics. And then, based on those factual statistics, you should have to defend your subjective decision, make it make sense by your criteria. How do you judge a round? This, and this. This is what I give priority to. This is the second most important thing, and these last 3 things are important, but not as important as the 1 and the 2. And based on that criteria, I look at these numbers. Does that jive? If not, you're gonna have a hard time defending your scorecard. And if it does, then all I can argue is whether your criteria is appropriate or not. And so that's how I go about judging fights, independently myself. And that is also how I go about judging judges. I look at what they've said, I look at the numbers, I'm like, well, I would love to know what your fucking criteria is because that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I was gonna say that'd be a good way to keep judges in check.
Exactly.
Too. Be like, dude, show us your scorecard and like show us the criteria that you met. Because I mean, Dana White, and I'm sure a lot of people in boxing will be the first to speak, like the judging right now in combat sports is pretty atrocious. You see so many people get robbed, and it's just one of those things where it's like, any fight camp, whether it's 8, 10, 12 weeks, whatever it is, like you put in all that work to get fucking robbed, it's like, I find the judge and fight them next. Like,
and I would say in most fights, they get it right.
Yes,
Most isn't good enough. And if it is wrong, it should be such a rarity that it's wrong that you can actually fix it, or at least be able to challenge it with facts.
Yeah.
That's why I believe Jabber is such an important new entity into the sport where it isn't yet involved in judging, but because it gives you these set of factual data points, it can't help but influence the judging if only the judges would pay attention to that or it is made available to them. I would say at the very minimum, judges should have these numbers in front of them between rounds as they're filling out their card so that they know what happened. I don't think every judge that gets it wrong is corrupt. I think that there's a lot of factors at play that can mislead a judge. And that information the judge just doesn't have. They can only sit on one side of the ring at a time, and they can only see so much, and they're human. You know, so I don't know what went on in your life the night before. I don't know if you stayed up all night. I don't know if you had a couple of pops before you got there. I don't know if some fucking idiot is behind you screaming the whole fight and it's distracting you. I don't know if most of the fight, for some reason, these fighters have their back to you and you can't see what's landing. I don't know if you hate Mexicans. And even though you're trying to judge fairly, boy, you can't get past that hate. So anything this other guy does against the Mexicans is going to be a win for you.
Not as good,
Yeah, you know? Like, these are things that are human failings, and you're not going to be able to get around them. So the more that we can use whatever technology available, and right now it's AI that has given us the most definitive and accurate numbers, use that shit to get it right. You know, the Hawkeye in tennis, where now we can see whether or not it's in or out. We need to use it. Who's not? Who cares what this guy dressed up looking at the line says if I got provable information based on technology? I don't want to know what the umpire thinks the fucking strike zone is. I want to see the little box.
The K zone.
If it's in the box, it's a strike. If it's out of the box, it's not a strike. And let this umpire do something else with the rest of his time, because there's no need for that level of human error anymore, because lives are changed. Now, in combat sports, it's different because now you're also talking about a sport where your very livelihood is tied to your life itself. You can die in the ring. You can die in any sport because if a baseball hits you
in the temple,
you can buy,
at the right
but
speed,
how often does that happen? Almost fucking never. Is that going to happen?
Hamlin died a couple years ago in football.
Almost. Never in baseball. And in football, of course, that's a much more contact that they're signing up for. And of course, your life after football can be very short statistically. So if you should have won the Super Bowl, you should get that fucking ring.
And the Super Bowl bonus that comes with it to feed your family.
If the ball crosses the line on camera, which now they have instant replay, can you imagine now trying to take instant replay out of football?
Oh, man.
Insane.
It'd be a joke.
It'd be insane. But for so long, there was no instant replay, and it was just based on hopefully getting it right. And a lot of human error changed a lot of what would have happened in the sport were it not for human error. So when it comes to combat specifically and especially, we got to do everything we can to get these fighters what they deserve, the wins that they've earned, and get it right. I am not at all nostalgic about shit that doesn't work anymore or things that are antiquated or outdated, especially, again, when it comes to a fight of any type, because that is a different level, I believe, of sacrifice and risk. And I believe it to be true for all competition, but in combat sports in particular, there is just another level of danger and risk there, and you should get what you fucking earn.
I'm right there with you, because I think I saw you post about Jabber on Instagram. I saw like some of the reels you posted, and I thought that was phenomenal, because that is something that should be brought in the game. Because most sports are starting to incorporate more AI type stuff. I'm kind of torn with it coming into baseball. It is becoming something you're starting to be able to review more plays, and there's certain things you can and can't review. I was a catcher in baseball, and there is an art to what's called framing a pitch, where you make a ball look like a strike. And there's a lot of value put into that as a catcher that can receive a ball well and make it look like a strike. And I shouldn't say surprisingly, but Major League Baseball umpires are pretty accurate when it comes to calling balls and strikes. But you're starting to see things tested out in the minor leagues, where if a batter truly believes that he got called out on a ball, he can just, hey, give her a quick review. Umpire waves up. Okay, cool. Ball, strike, you're out, whatever. It's a quick process when they're doing that. I'm like, okay, bring that into the game.
Fuck that. The truth is,
fuck that.
We don't need to be challenged. You can challenge, like I saw in the World Series, they were challenging calls at the plate, right? Why? Just fucking let the machine call it in the first place. You don't like this is such bullshit, man. Like holding on to these nostalgic notions that humans have to be involved in technical elements of the sport when technology has surpassed them is asinine to me. It is so stupid, and it is entirely to do with our egos. Like we have to be.
Yeah.
Shut the fuck up, dude.
Yeah.
Like we have something that does that. Stop doing that.
We have a computer that can do that for you.
I came here from LA today, and on my way to the airport, there were cars driving next to me with no drivers. I think it's called Wayso, some shit.
Yeah.
And there was no driver in there. Now listen, I don't know how that technology works, but I'll tell you something. If it does work, and it is working in LA, of course, nothing is without its kinks. But I'll tell you what, it's not. It's not drunk.
Yeah.
It's not sleepy. It's not
stink.
fucking around with the radio.
Yeah.
It's not arguing with its wife.
Right? Yeah. With the earpiece in, yelling.
Tired.
Yeah.
So if the amount of deaths that happen in car accidents from all of these factors, and sometimes both drivers are paying attention and they just have an accident. Yeah. If all of those deaths and major injuries can be prevented from automated driving, get from behind the wheel.
Yeah, go sit in the backseat.
Go drive bumper cars. Yeah. Go drive on these little tracks of those little mini cars and shit. If you
go-karts.
Love driving, get yourself a dune buggy and go out there where it's just you. But as far as traffic in the city, if you can automate driving, automate it.
Yeah.
That's it. Don't be sitting in the driver's seat and let the machine take over when you fall asleep. No, let it drive. I would put all this shit on grids and let people get around. That would solve traffic jams. But more importantly than anything, it solves the amount of car accidents that are killing people.
Yeah.
And if that were to be introduced by anybody, there would be so much pushback against that. Like, well, the machines, we're not going to let the machines drive us around. I want to drive my own car. Freedom, fucking freedom. Not even giving a consideration to how many lives are lost from human error in driving.
Yeah.
You can automate that shit, automate it.
Yeah, I get that. I love driving.
Yeah, so take your ass out to the fucking desert, get yourself a track.
Just me and myself.
Yeah.
But what do you do if you're running late? Is your car programmed to not break the speed limit?
Exactly.
Don't run late.
You'll be fucking late. You should have left earlier.
Yeah.
The fact that you're running late and think that means you get to break the speed limit, run the light, ignore a pedestrian, that's how people get killed.
Because your dumb ass woke up late.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yes, especially when you're late.
What about if you're like running your pregnant wife to the hospital?
There's a setting for that.
Is there a setting for it?
Let's see how dilated she is. You can probably put her up
put in a camera.
And then the glove compartment
Doctor's like, no, go the speed limit.
Takes a picture for the doctor, sends it to the hospital. Doctor's like, yeah, that's it. All right, give that guy a special track. And you know what happens?
Everyone move over.
Your late ass on the way to work gets pushed to the side, and the pregnant woman zooms by, and then you get right back in the line of traffic. You could probably get her there faster.
Yeah. Right, if there's like an emergency setting.
Yes,
like all cars know to get over.
Of course, in a minute, the car will be able to deliver the baby when you have to go.
Yeah, no
Just
shit,
put her in the back seat.
The Tesla robot just delivering your baby.
Get the baby out of the trunk, and you go to the house.
Out of the trunk? Hopefully it's not in the trunk. Yeah, I mean, but when it comes to bringing it to sports, like especially combat sports, these guys have on baseball, you get struck out on a ball, guess what? You get 3 more attempts that night and another shot tomorrow. MMA is not like that. Boxing's not like that. You get that one night. And that could be your one big night. That could be your one and only chance. If you're a guy that just got called up on from a local promotion, like say UFC comes to Austin, someone doesn't make weight, or fight week, someone gets staph infection. They're like, hey, so-and-so from 10th Planet, we know you're on the brink of making it. Do you want to take this UFC fight? They deserve to have the very best people officiating that.
And what about the guy who beats the favorite? Who dethrones the champion, who doesn't get the decision he should get, and will never again get the shot that he had. Yeah. May never be that good on a night again. And that night was his night. That night could change the trajectory of his entire life if he gets that title that he should get, and he doesn't get it. Yeah. You know how many guys have that story whose names we don't remember because they didn't get it? And for a few weeks, everybody's, he got fucking robbed, bro. Remember that? But a few years?
Yeah.
Nobody remembers that, man.
Yeah. Dominic Reyes fought John Jones's last fight at light heavyweight. And very close fight. I'm again probably biased because of John. I thought John won 3, 4, and 5. Dominic Reyes definitely won rounds 1 and 2. A lot of people think round 3 went to Dominic Reyes. It's kind of a coin flip. But John definitely finished the fight in championship rounds like a champion. He dominated the last two. And the way Dominic Reyes reacted, like in that moment and the days preceding that, I was like, he's gonna be that guy at the bar 20 years from now, drunk, saying, "I beat John Jones."
I beat John Jones. No,
Yeah.
you did,
And then he went on. And then he went on like a 5-fight losing streak. I think he's rebounded a little bit since. But he started getting
But how
knocked
much
out
money
bad.
did that cost him? What would it done to his
Sponsorships,
mentality
everything, yeah.
if he had gotten the decision? Maybe he doesn't.
Now you're the champ.
He wouldn't even be fighting those 5 guys.
Exactly. Yeah.
His whole life would be different.
I agree. Yeah.
And
exactly.
I'm not saying I don't even see the fight. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. But I'm not saying he won it. I'm just saying, fucking generally in a situation like you described, if that guy does win that fight in the ring but not on the cards, that is what happens to his life.
Fucks people up.
And that's no good, man.
Yeah, no, like I said, I agree because, like you said,
the only thing you can't fucking automate is talking. Don't fuck around. Like this is what
now it gets personal.
Humans still have to do.
Yeah, I want real shit. I don't want a robot that's more handsome than me.
Yeah, I don't want you fucking getting an AI guest instead of me.
Oh fuck, dude, never. I'll be the last person. I am one of the least tech savvy people. Do you know who Mike Lee is?
That's too common a name.
Yeah, right. That's a super
I
common
know a
name.
few Mike Lees.
Yeah.
Yes, I know a Mike Lee boxer. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna be having him on next week, and he wanted me to add him to my Google Calendar so he can get the email for like the arrangement.
Yeah.
And dude, I'm so not tech savvy. I was like, yeah, I'll add that to you. And I had to ask Matt. I was like, hey Matt, how do you fucking add someone to a Google Calendar? And I'm the least tech savvy. So don't worry about me having an AI guest unless it's Allen Iverson.
Now I say that a little tongue in cheek. I mean, I do think that kind of work that I do, that you are embarking on in learning how to evoke from actual people what's inside them, get at their spirit, learn their fight, learn from them. I think that is a human interaction thing that can't be supplemented. But with that said, I do understand how AI is a shorthand for factual information. Mm-hmm. I don't think it is at the place yet that is incorruptible. Yeah. So I don't know that I trust it to give any kind of information other than factual, non-biased shit. Once you start asking it questions that require some understanding and perspective, I think it falls short, right? Yeah. Like, so with that said, I would trust my research on the internet due to AI ferreting out what is factual and what is inconsistent with other accounts of history if I'm preparing for an interview, more than I would listening to what other people say about you. Mm-hmm. Right? I would use that tool is what I'm saying, rather than just rely on listening to other people's opinion of you and then trying to keep my own biases out and then, you know what I mean? Like, so even though I'm not ready to be replaced, which no one is wanting to be replaced, I think I am in a field that is uniquely necessary to be performed by a human. Yeah. However, it doesn't have to be necessarily supported by a human. I would rather AI, once the facts are available, to impart the facts to me. And then, I have a research guy, most shows do. If I have my research guy, then I would task him with something other than just delivering me factual information. I would then task him with, okay, well, who likes this guy, who doesn't like this guy? What do the people who hate him say? What do the people who love him say? Yeah. And get that information for me, because that is something else that a human can ferret out and understand, like inflection and like, the kind of ways who people who don't like you speak about you that I don't think AI can ferret. But facts, if this guy has a feeling about my guest, my researcher, I mean, he might deliver me a certain set of facts based on his own bias. A little bias, and if I can use AI to give me unbiased information, then I'm not using the human to give me potentially biased information. Yeah. So yes, in every field, in every respect, I think use what's available and stop fucking resisting change. If change makes you more efficient, more factual, makes it a greater value, and you can make life a little bit more fair, whether it be for an athlete or an employee or driving or whatever it is, man. I am not one who's just like, let's not do that because I want to do it. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Now, what about when it comes to driving as a sport?
That's a sport. Well,
Yeah.
that wouldn't be fun.
Yeah, robots, right? AI, yeah, you
that's
still
not
want
fun.
the human aspect of
Right.
that.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about traffic. I'm not
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about NASCAR or
F1, yeah.
F1 and any of this shit. Yeah, like F that and F1. Like that is what driving should be for if it can be automated in traffic, which only makes that, I think, more of a interesting thing to watch and like a skill that you. Because what the fuck does a F1 driver have to do with an Uber driver?
Nah.
Like
They're both from different countries.
Fair. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, that's a unique thing that you can hone in a very specific environment. One thing I would say, though, I mean, if it were possible, and probably, I don't know, F1 people might resist something like this, but what if you could put in the car something that prevented them from crashing? You're not going to speed it up. You're not going to slow it down. You're not going to... But if split seconds before a crash happens, the AI and the machines could course correct you, would that be worth changing the sport?
Yeah.
I don't know. That'd be up to the drivers. But if the driver said we want that level of safety, I would champion it. But it would change the sport.
That'd
it would
be
change
interesting because I think there's a. Don't get me wrong, accidents happen in F1 all the time or NASCAR, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think there's also a skill to avoiding those. Like you should be a good enough driver to get around that. Now there are certain instances where it's unavoidable, and I'm not super well versed on driving sports in general. But I'm saying I think that would take. You're getting. I don't want to say lazier drivers. I'm not going to say that, but like. It takes away some of the skill you have to hone to be at that level.
Yeah, so in theory, this would be the argument, right? And for me, in theory, knowing very, very little about F1, so I'm not going to win this argument with anybody who does, but in theory, that is not specific to F1, but the theory of whether or not you use a technology to save lives, I'm going to come down on the side of I will give away the fact that you need to be better at avoiding accidents if this doesn't happen, because if you're not good enough at it, or one of the two of you is not skilled enough at it, even though you're excellent at avoiding accidents, if this fucking guy isn't, then you're still getting in the accident.
Yeah, that's true.
And the accident can cause death or severe injury.
Right.
And is that the gamble that makes the sport so much more exciting that you wouldn't watch it if the driver wasn't potentially going to die today? I don't think we need that level of suspense. Like I could take death out of just like literally any sport and I'd still watch it.
Sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't need the potential of fucking fatal car accidents or a fatal punch to still be excited about the sport.
Yeah, I'm not going to stop. I mean, I don't watch NASCAR anyway, but I wouldn't stop watching it just because nobody can die anymore.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think it was, I feel like that show, was it Drive to Survive on Netflix? Got so big over COVID, but I think early on in one of the seasons, like one of the drivers, not one of the main drivers, but like one of the like B-level drivers like dies in an accident. Yeah, it's like, man, it's fucking wild that like that kind of shit still happens. But in boxing, it's still something that's very much on the forefront. In MMA, a little different. Yeah, I don't know when was the last time an MMA fighter died in the octagon. But in boxing, it hasn't been.
It was never.
It probably never. It probably is never, to be honest with you. Yeah. Maybe like in some dingy bar in Ecuador.
Well, that doesn't count.
Doesn't count, yeah. But in the UFC, never.
In the octagon, the fucking UFC, I don't think anyone's ever died. And in boxing,
so
people are dying still a lot. Like, you know.
When was the last one?
It wasn't that long ago, to be fair. And, you know, yes, unlike UFC, there isn't a league of boxing where it's like you can just take statistics and fights from this one entity and look at everything that's happened in that one entity, and that's basically the totality of. I realize that there's other MMA leagues,
promotions,
right?
Yeah.
But boxing happens all over the world to different degrees of safety, different levels of even equipment, much less any kind of technology, and so. You know, I think just because I believe, and I don't have any statistics to back this up, I haven't done any research, but just based on what I know about the world and the sport, I think boxing happens a lot more than MMA fights happen.
Yeah.
So the fact that it is the kind of sport where you don't have to die on the night either. You know,
Right.
you can have a brain bleed the next day. You can go have a concussion and then slip into a coma.
Yeah.
You can become, you know, for a crass word, but for lack of a better word, like incapacitated as like a vegetable. Like
Yeah.
there are things that, you know, you can walk out of the arena with that'll kill you, you
Later
know,
on. Yeah.
later, but not that much longer.
Yeah. There's man, I want to say it's been within the last 5 years. He was maybe Russian or Ukrainian, like 19-0, younger guy, probably around like 170, 185, maybe one of those weight classes. Yeah, he walked out of the ring and died in the dressing room.
Right.
Yeah, and it's like, and again, that wasn't even that long ago. And I feel like it was in a span where within maybe a 3 to 6 month span, there were like 2 boxers that like made news of dying. And I was like, what the fuck? I was like, that's so wild. But it is the reality of the sport. I mean, that's combat sports in general, but I feel like boxing is still a sport that probably more so than any other sport. Like that is something that's still pretty prevalent. Like what other sport, a mainstream sport, not like bullfighting or anything like that,
Right.
but where like someone still has that, I won't say high, but that potential
Yeah,
of death.
I mean, I don't need to do the statistical research officially to be very confident that none. is
Right.
the
Yeah.
answer.
Right. Yeah. It's not happening, man.
Right.
Wild. So big fights coming up. You going to Jake Paul, Tyson. What's the next like meaningful big fight?
It'll be the rematch for Alexander Usyk and Tyson Fury
Yeah.
in Saudi, December 21st. The first fight, I believe, was decisive but close.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was an undisputed heavyweight championship, the first we'd had in this entire century. Over 25 years ago was the last one. And it was not Evander Holyfield, but Lennox Lewis.
Yeah.
And so that's a British fighter. British fans took great pride in that. And Tyson Fury had the opportunity to be a British undisputed heavyweight champion. Lost to Usyk, the Ukrainian. And now, even though this won't be an undisputed rematch because the IBF title is held by Daniel Dubois right now, who knocked out Anthony Joshua in a fantastic underdog fucking night of classic boxing lore. Like that fight, that night, the fact that he was such a big underdog, Daniel was, and knocked out Anthony Joshua, the British king of boxing, in 5 rounds, knocked him down 3 times. Wow. Like that was a massive night. So, but he holds, rightly so, the IBF title. And so now Fury and Usyk will fight for the outstanding titles. And a lot of people think of that fight as a pick'em. I tend to, and this is a general statement, but believe that whoever won the first fight is much more likely to win the rematch. I don't know what adjustments Tyson intends to make. I think there are some obvious ones, like I don't believe he was as focused in the first half of the fight as he could have and should have been. I think he was fucking around playing his kind of like bullshit head game, thinking that he was gonna like lure Usyk into some mistake by him pretending, Fury, I mean, that this fight wasn't as challenging and that he could just do whatever he wanted. And Usyk didn't fall for it, stayed on it.
Yeah.
You know, almost knocked him out. Bell saved him. Bell saved Tyson. And then later in the fight, Tyson landed a big uppercut, which hurt Usyk, and he could have potentially finished him, although he didn't knock him down. I saw that uppercut land. I knew Usyk was hurt. After the fight, Usyk admitted that, man, that was a moment of truth right there. So it's heavyweight boxing. He lands that punch again. Maybe the fight goes differently.
Right.
So we don't know, but I expect that to be a great, entertaining fight. And afterwards, for both fighters, I think is a potential that we don't see either one of them, whoever wins, defending those championships. I think there's a good chance that Usyk maybe retires after that fight, win, lose, or draw. I don't think Fury is going to fight mandatories, so he might end up letting those titles go up for vacant titles and just fight who the fuck he wants to fight.
Yeah.
And so this will probably be the last kind of hoorah for those guys at that level.
Now, did I hear right that Usyk kind of has a hard time staying at heavyweight, like weight-wise?
He's a much smaller heavyweight than everyone else. He's a cruiserweight undisputed champion.
He fought Better Beav or Bivol? Which one did he fight? Like amateur level?
Bivol.
He fought Bivol at amateur level?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember seeing, or not remember, I didn't see it that long ago, but I saw clips of that fight because they were wearing headgear, and
Yeah,
I was like, this is the same guy that just fought Tyson Fury.
yeah.
Yeah, I was like, he's fucking fighting
I don't
B-ball.
make much of what happened in the amateurs for fighters, even if it was the Olympics. Like amateur, and by the time you're at this level of professional, that shit doesn't matter. You know,
Sure,
I don't
yeah.
even take much from what happened in sparring sessions, which fighters nowadays are so big on bragging about and acting like, you know what I mean? That's not what
Yeah, I
sparring
beat
is
him in
for.
sparring.
You're not supposed to be competing like
Yeah.
that anyway. You're like, you know, you're supposed to be working on shit.
Yeah, I don't win sparring rounds.
Yeah, exactly. It certainly doesn't mean you're gonna win on the night because you maybe bested a guy in sparring. What if he was working on something, not using a certain defense or not hitting as hard so that he could get the work? If you come into a fighter's camp to give him work, then it should remain in the gym. I don't believe in like bragging about that shit after or releasing the tape and all that shit.
Yeah,
Like,
who did Sean
it's
O'Malley?
lame.
There's a video of Sean O'Malley sparring someone, and like that got leaked, and yeah, I don't like stuff like that. Like that stuff's not like for the public. You know, because I've been fortunate to be in some pretty cool sparring situations, not myself in them, but like being able to watch. And it's one of those things like, it's like hallowed ground. It's like sacred to be in there. Like you should feel privileged to be in there.
Yeah, there should be some honor and respect amongst the two fighters that this is what it is, and this is not that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, nobody wins sparring rounds.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure you've also had training partners in the past where you're like, you catch them one clean shot, even if it's at your 60%, but it just popped them cleanly. It's like, okay, this should probably go on my record now because you're going to turn it up into a level that's like that ego sparring is the fucking worst.
Well, because I've never been a competitive boxer, I've never sparred with somebody who wasn't a friend or a trainer.
Okay.
I don't just spar random people.
Yeah, well, that's nice.
What I mean?
Yeah. Dude, man, it sucks. So Jackson Wink used to be like one of the true like destinations for MMA. Great altitude is one of the reasons. Albuquerque's a mile high. But then Greg Jackson of Jackson Wink, there's Greg Jackson and Mike Winklejohn. And everyone loves Greg Jackson. He's a guy that's like, I don't think he's ever actually competed, but just a brilliant mind within the sport. John Jones still uses him as his head coach, but other than that, I don't think he corners anybody. I think he's mostly retired. And so once like Winklejohn really started to take the reins at Jackson Wink, they kind of opened up like training and sparring to like the public. It used to be invite only kind of stuff. And it really lost like some of the lure. And like I know some of the fighters really hated the way like Cowboy left after that. Quite a few fighters started to leave after like Winklejohn started running stuff. And it's one of those things like at that level, right? It should be like such a sacred spot to be. Like you shouldn't just be inviting some bum off the street to come give Holly Holmes a hard round.
Right.
Yeah, it's like we don't need that. You need someone that's just that high level to give them match their pace. Like they need that same energy. They don't need someone trying to win sparring rounds. Yeah. That kind of shit just bugs me. So like I said, I only competed twice in Muay Thai. First fight was with headgear. Both were amateur. First fight was in Arizona. We had cloth, shin guards, and headgear. No elbows were allowed at the level that I fought at. It was in a tournament. Second fight, amateur in New Mexico, no headgear, no shin guards, all elbows legal. Like New Mexico, like so the different states just have like wild rules sometimes. And I was never a fan of headgear. Like for me, now I'm not saying like for boxing is totally different because like the amount of work they put in is different in my opinion. And for Muay Thai training, I saw the best benefit with headgear being cuts. Like it did a really good job of preventing cuts. But when I trained with headgear, I was like, I feel like I'm getting hit just as hard. My head, I feel hotter. I feel like and now I get rocked and my vision's kind of obscured.
The
heat of headgear, dude. Fuck me up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was my competitive experience. Great though, I loved it.
Yeah. All right. Well, now you're in another competitive field, which is
there we go.
Talking. You've done a good job of talking
man.
today.
Appreciate that. Yeah, this is again. I'm all new to this. Like I've been given the gift of gab, I guess you could say. Like I've always loved getting to know people and genuine. I think that's another reason that separates me a little bit more from other like strength and conditioning coaches. Like I have several certifications.
See, this today you are dealing with a exceptional orator athlete. And that I had the strength and the conditioning to get through this entire conversation with this high energy, full engagement.
Love it.
You know what I mean? Like this is you're
championship round,
the top championship round. 15.
Yeah, full 15. Yeah. We didn't stop at 12. We kept going.
We kept going. So yeah, man, it's been fun. I love this set. I love this whole setup, and I can sense that you're, finding your way around like how your show's going to work and what you want to glean from people. I would say, if I could,
Sure.
you know, find your thing. Like, focus on a thing that you want the show to do. Figure out what it is that you want to give your audience as, if not a gift, as a duty,
Yeah.
right? Like, what is, because the one thing I don't appreciate is just like random talk, which is what a lot of this space is filled with in the field. I don't mean the show, but in the field is a lot of people just sitting around jabbering. And then comedians will have their shows and they just want to get the next one-liner in. But there's only a handful of shows where I feel like there's intention behind it, where the host has taken his time to determine what the show is meant to deliver and bring the audience something consistently that they have of value, something that, you know, you got to actually work to get there, because you'll be in a position to talk to a lot of important people that will be able to keep conversation going, but it's your job to direct that conversation and to really, kind of like in boxing, which is my minimalist skills, kind of cut the fat and get to the meat and serve something to the audience that is dense with
Value.
Substance, and then they can glean from that substance the value that is needed, because that's what you said that you wanted to do, is to help people find that thing. So you don't know what that person needs, but you know if there's a density of substance in what you're delivering, they'll find what they need in it. Yeah. And so
thank you, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, hell yeah, man. Appreciate you having on, dude. Taking the time to come here, it means a lot to me. It really does.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I had fun. Let's do it again.
All right, hell yeah. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Lions Pit podcast. This is my awesome guest, Radio Rahim. I'm your host, Ned Gomez. Shout out to the fine folks at LSKD for hooking me up with the sweetest workout apparel. I appreciate y'all. Don't forget to tune in next time.
Find your way to the Lions Den.
Yeah.